We have quorum. All right, we're gonna get started. Is the feed live? Good morning. All right, good morning. I'm Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey, Chair of the Infrastructure Environment Committee. We have quorum, so I will now call meeting 19 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we are meeting in different locations today, the Infrastructure and Environment Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call the speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Infrastructure and Environment Committee link at toronto.ca and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices, and I want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at iec@toronto.ca to help with motions. I have advanced circulated or in the process of advanced circulating my motions, so I do encourage you to do that so that we can make sure they get all the technical checks that are needed by city staff. Before we move on to the business, I also want to recognize that we have a new member on this committee. We are now joined by Councillor Chernos Lynn, who has joined our Infrastructure and Environment Committee, and I know that this topic is very dear to her, and so we look forward to the many valuable contributions that we know we will have from her in the years to come as we work through the very important business of the city. With that, are there any declarations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes? Councillor Pasternak, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Okay, we have 11 items on the agenda and 3 new business items, so we will proceed with the rundown. Item 1, 19.1, Cycling Network Plan 2025, Cycling Infrastructure Installation First Quarter Update. I will hold as there are speakers. Anti-idling bylaw, 19.2, I will hold. We have speakers on this item as well. IE 19.3 Street A Environmental Assessment Study, I will hold. We have 1 speaker. IE 19.4 1886 to 1920 Eglinton Avenue West, I will hold as we have 1 speaker. 19.5 William Allen Road Underpass Construction Staging, I will hold. I have 1 very quick question, so that will be a quick release later. I don't know if other questions are as well. And Councillor Pasternak wanted to hold it anyway. Okay, great. IE 19.6 King Street Transit Priority Corridor Improvement, I will hold. There are 2 speakers. IE 19.7 Wastewater Energy Program Implementation. Would anybody like to hold this item? Seeing none, would somebody like to move the item? Councillor Sachs is moving. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. IE 19.8 Proposed Amendments to Municipal Code Chapter 367 Building Emissions Performance. I will hold. I have a motion that's advanced circulated, and I don't know if anybody wants to hold for discussion.
I move the item with the amendment.
So this is just asking that the city continue to work with the province so that we can simplify reporting. They're collecting this data anyway, so they should be sharing it back with us, and there's no reason for us to not work together on this important initiative. So with that, we can vote on the amendment. All in favor on the item as amended, all in favor, all opposed, that item carries. Okay, that brings us to IE 19.9. Strengthening Toronto's Tree Canopy Report on Climate Resilience. We have 1 speaker. I will hold. IE 19.10 Options to Fund and Expand the AH2O To Go Water Trailer, I will hold. We have a speaker on the item. IE 19.11, I will hold. We have 3 speakers. We also have OMERS here today, and they will be giving a presentation. So I'm going to recommend we make that the first order of business. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, great. So that is first order of business. We'll hold that item. That brings us to new business. Councillor Sachs, 19.12, corporate landowners should have to clear their sidewalks again. Would you like to move it to the agenda? We can hold it so people can have time to read it. Okay, Councillor Sachs is moving that to the agenda. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. IE 19.13, higher fines, faster towing, and demerit points for blocking snow routes. Councillor Sachs is introducing this. Would you like to introduce it? All those in favor? All those opposed? We'll hold so everybody has time to read that. IE 1914, I have a report back request on the Toronto Region Board of Trade's recommendations to say how we're aligning. So I'll move that to the agenda. All those in favor? All those opposed? We can hold that so people have time to read that too. Okay, so that was a lot. We have quite a few items that are being held, so we will be mindful of time. We do have speakers, and we will make sure to let you know you have 5 minutes. I'll give you a warning with about 15 seconds for final thoughts. And with that, we'll move over to our first item of business. Welcome to OMERS. I think we are planning about 10 minutes, and I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Good. So here you go. Okay to go, Madam Chair? Thank you very much. My name is George Cook, and I am the Independent Board Chair of OMERS Administration Corporation. I have colleagues with me today who will largely be the ones that conduct this presentation. To my immediate left is our Chief Pension Officer, Celine Chavetti, Catherine Preston beside her, and Hala Alakal beside Catherine. Before I turn the presentation over to them, I'd just like to summarize very quickly. On Monday of this week, we released both our financial and our climate results, audited as at the end of 2024. We were very pleased to report that in this particular environment, we had earned a return of 8.3%, a 4-year average of 8.1%, improved our funded ratio, and reduced our discount rate. I also was very proud as having been part of the board that's approved our climate action plan to note that all of our climate metrics improved as well during 2024, and that's the substance of what you'll hear today. I turn it over to my colleagues. Catherine, I think you're going first.
Yes, thanks, George, and thanks to the committee for having us back. I wanted to refresh the committee. We were here in October, and so I don't want to review or repeat myself on the first couple of slides. So we'll jump right to slide 5. And I'll run through the commitments we made and then more details on the progress we're making against those, which you'll see in the annual report, which comes out tomorrow, as George referenced. So the commitments we have are around our ambition to be net zero, both in the portfolio and in our corporate operations by 2050. So that's a long way away. How do we measure our success in getting there across that time frame? We measure things like our carbon footprint. We made commitments to grow our investments in green assets. We are working with high-emitting companies in the portfolio to reduce their emissions over time. And we've excluded the highest carbon intensity companies, which are in the fossil fuel sector, which is those that deliver thermal coal with material revenues over 25%. So our spectrum of commitments is not just about reducing the carbon risk in the portfolio, but also about investing in solutions and working on decarbonization, because it's all aspects of that pie that are required to help us get to net zero. You can move ahead one more slide, please. So the progress. We've reduced the carbon intensity of the portfolio 58% from when we started measuring in 2019. This stacks up against the commitment we've made to reduce it 50%. So although we're happy with the progress we're making and we have surpassed that goal on that time frame, We know that it's a point-in-time measure. It is going to fluctuate up and down year on year, and we'll show that data upcoming in a little bit, but we're confident that we're on the right path. We showed an increase in the green investments from 21 to 23 billion, so 2 billion more in the last year. We continue to also service are the bonds that we've issued as OMERS. We have a sustainability bond. Oxford has a green bond out in the market, and that accounts for $2 billion of allocation. We're also holding ourselves accountable through compensation and have compensation requirements from senior executives on the investment team and across the enterprise to ensure that our work is aligned with the climate action plan. And last but not least is the 64%, which relates to the amount of the emissions in the portfolio that we're engaging with directly to ensure those companies have credible plans to get to net zero 2050. So if we move to the next slide, we'll dive into a little bit of detail, and I'm sorry, it's a lot on one page and a lot of numbers. But the key aspect is the blue bars represent our carbon intensity of the portfolio and the trajectory that has been on each of the last 5 years. So you can see that that's coming down. The blue line is the absolute emissions. So the blue bars relate to an intensity measure. The line relates to absolute emissions. So that's all the companies in the portfolio that we own. We add up all their emissions and the amount of ownership we have in those companies. And you can see it has fluctuated a bit, but has been trending down generally. So when George talks about our results going in the direction that we've committed to, you can see the evidence here on that slide. So if we move to the next slide, one more data-filled slide that I'll just point out some key measures. By breaking it out by asset class, it allows folks to see where the emissions really are. And real assets are the real driver of the emissions in the OMERS portfolio, and that includes infrastructure assets and real estate through Oxford. The primary drivers of those emissions are really within the infrastructure book, where we do have more control over those companies and can engage directly with them. The other key data point is the amount of emissions that are disclosed publicly by the companies that we invest in, which is important to help us do these measurements in a more accurate way. The more correct data we have, the less estimating we have to do. So that's up to 71% across the portfolio, which is quite good. It also means there's still work to do, which is why OMERS has been advocating publicly with securities regulators around the globe about standardizing and mandating that disclosure. We do that here with the Ontario Securities Commission, but the more companies that are required to make that disclosure, the better we can do this work. So we can move on to the next slide. This is something new. I'll try to distill it down. We released our climate taxonomy near the end of last year. What it allows us to do is not just talk about the green assets in the portfolio, which we have been disclosing for several years, but what is everything else in the portfolio? Is it all high emitting? No, it allows us to break out who's helping kind of enable the transition to a low carbon energy system, what companies are lower impact, and then what are the higher emitting companies by sector that we need to target our engagement on. So lots of words there describing what sectors are in which bucket, but the next slide shows how the portfolio looks against that. And what we like to see is that the green, the enabling, and the low carbon impact make up 65% of the portfolio. So when we think about the fund overall, it is lower emitting, 65%. So then we target the work that we're doing on engagement and advocacy on that 35% that still has high emitting assets. So we can move on one more slide, which is just the last one I'll speak to before turning to my colleague Hella, is on the growth in green investments. So these are investments OMERS has in things like renewable energy, clean power, such as Bruce Power here in Ontario, and green buildings around the world. And so that continues to grow in value towards our goal of 30 billion by 2030. So over to you, Hella.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. So on this slide, what we wanted to provide an update on is the journey we've embarked on and the process we've started looking at physical climate risk. Physical climate risk is essentially the exposure to extreme weather events. And over the past year, working across different teams at OMERS, we've created a physical risk heat map, understanding where that exposure is, and assessing vulnerabilities and adaptation measures. And with that, I'll go on to the next slide, please. And where we've also spent a lot of time over the past year is integration. If you remember, the first slide that we glossed over talks about our philosophy, and that's integration, collaboration, and engagement. And you'll see here on the capacity building and enhanced climate governance, the two first boxes on this slide, the results and the progress, whether it's on integration within our business units, our ESG assessment procedures, so our enhanced due diligence process for any new transaction, acquisition, and so on, or on the education piece. Because in order to deliver on the targets that we've just discussed, the whole organization needs to be aware and upskilled, and this is where you see some of the internal training that we've been rolling out, as well as education sessions that are sector-specific. For example, on the real estate front, which is this area that I cover, we've had a number of execution-focused sessions, for example, on the net zero piece. And the two last points I'll cover are two case studies. One of our portfolio companies, which is a logistics investment in the US, and you can see the numbers around the rooftop solar coverage and the clean energy generated and the savings. And another example, which is from London in the UK, which is Victoria House, a historical building which are harder to retrofit and make green, in which we've managed to achieve quite impressive results. If you allow a bit of pride in that project. So, and that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have three deputants, so I'm going to suggest we do the three deputants and then we go back to questions, just in case anything does arise from that. So our three deputants are Lee Ramsey, followed by Hamish Wilson, followed by Mark Richardson. Do we have Lee in the room? Online? Okay. Hamish Wilson, I know Hamish is here. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks for hauling in. And this is getting there. This is good progress, and I'm very pleased that a group called Shift has had the wherewithal to really go over what OMERS is doing. And so, if you've had the time to look at that, that's wonderful. There are a couple of things. I sent a link in with by email. You may not have had time to read the news item from Canada Press, February 25th, yesterday, so I'll be quick in reading it. Canadian asset owners representing about $53 billion in holdings say they're disappointed that Canada's financial institutions have left net zero emissions initiatives and are calling for them to follow through on climate commitments. The 34 signatories to an open letter include the Trottier Family Foundation, the Canada Post Pension Plan, United Church of Canada, and the University of Victoria. Together, they're raising concerns about departures from the UN-backed Net Zero Banking Alliance, which all of Canada's 6 biggest banks quit in January to follow departures by the biggest US banks ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration. The asset owners say membership in the Banking Alliance, as well as the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, signals a baseline level of accountability as well as consistent reporting to provide transparency and comparability. Signatories say they expect banks to follow through on net zero by 2050 commitments. They also call on banks to continue setting robust, quote-unquote, targets for 2030 and to provide standardized annual progress reports. Canadian banks that left the alliance include RBC, TD, BMO, CIBC, Scotiabank, and National Bank, said they have internal capabilities to follow through on their climate commitments independently. So, just hoping that OMERS has been part of this initiative. You never know. And maybe, I'm not sure who the City of Toronto banks with, but maybe it's time to rethink that. Overall, with the climate issue, we're not doing well at measuring some externalities, like air travel, for instance. So that's a gaping chasm in our measurements. Also including aluminum, this is more esoteric, but aluminum has some pretty permanent greenhouse gases associated with its smelting, not merely the energy that it requires to make it. So by investing in airports or having a stake in them, there's a whole bunch of scope 3, scope 4, scope 2 extra emissions that are associated with that, as well as the extra impact of the height of emissions on the overall warming. So I don't consider anything to do with air travel green at all, although we can justify it often. So I'd flag that as being something that isn't so green. Also, I don't regard nuclear power as particularly emissions-free. It's not so green, especially when we haven't dealt with the waste. And it's like the capital energy and the operating energy aspect of things. We have capital budgets and operating budgets. We tend to ignore the capital energy budgets and the capital carbon for most everything that we do, and that's less okay. So if something's built, maybe it's arguable that it's greener because it exists, and we use an awful lot of water in Toronto, and the transit system is thirsty. So yeah, how do we make the transitions? But I certainly don't, I'm suspicious of how green we are if we're thinking about doing anything new. And perhaps if OMERS would like to push back on the city to make a bit more transparency and accountability in its GHG profile, I think that'd be good too. And of course, the province is way worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Sachs.
Thank you, Hamish. Certainly the province is way worse. Do you have a specific question for the OMERS team?
How much of it might be invested locally in housing on their sites? That would be one thing to think about. How could we harness their resource, your resource, to somehow invest in the housing issues? And that's a fraught, tricky area, but that might be something to think about what we could actually get to do to provide capital sources for housing profile, not provision, not just in Toronto, everywhere.
Okay, so that's, thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Hamish. Our next speaker is Mark Richardson. Mark, I don't see him in the room. See online? Hi, Mark. Oh, you're on camera. Okay, great. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
I have some slides to share. I've been given the right to share, please. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Sorry. The mics weren't on when we were saying that.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Richardson. I'm a volunteer with Housing Now TO. I promise you, Hamish and I didn't plot to do this back to back, but I'm kind of glad that we are. I just want to echo what Hamish had to say earlier, that local housing is green housing. You know, this week, OMERS reported an 8.3% return for 2024, and their net assets are $138 billion. At the same time, councillors around the table are well aware of the hiring challenges that the City of Toronto currently has and the upcoming challenges with Local 79. And a big part of that is because people who work for the city, who pay into the OMERS pension fund, can no longer afford to buy into or rent in properties that are being developed in the City of Toronto, even those that are being developed by the OMERS pension fund. I wrote a star editorial last year, just after Labor Day, that pension plans should build housing their members can afford. We're not asking them to build rent geared to income housing. We're not asking them to build social housing. We're asking them to build housing for the members of their pension fund. What can their retirees afford? What can a public health nurse at the City of Toronto afford? What can somebody who's driving a snowplow for the City of Toronto afford? And we're not just, picking on OMERS. We're talking about all of the pension funds. We've talked about the teachers' pension plan in Cadillac Fairview. We've talked about OMERS. We've talked about the public sector pension plan in Northcrest up at Downsview. OMERS is 100% owner of Oxford. They are developing projects and they're expanding projects. Like Union Park has more than doubled in size next to the Sky Dome, near the Metro Hall, with a very, very low commitment to affordable housing or workforce housing within that project. They're looking to redevelop Yorkdale Mall. They're looking to redevelop the Canada Square site along with Create TO, which is right at the intersection at Yonge and Eglinton with all that transit investment. They're also looking to expand Scarborough Town Center's residential component, over 15,000 units of housing there along the new Scarborough subway line. So there's 27, 28,000. That number will likely be 30,000 by the time those units actually get built just within the Oxford stack. How many of those 27, 28,000 units would be affordable to an average City of Toronto employee? Your plan is to create a lot of housing in the City of Toronto. The large pension funds, including OMERS, are definitely part of that commitment. The most important thing they can do from a green point of view is build housing for workers near where they work. If they work at Metro Hall, if they work at City Hall, if they work at Scarborough Civic Center, they're building developments near all of those properties. We don't want people having to have a 2 and 3 hour commute to come into the city. There needs to be a positive obligation and commitment within corporate social responsibility, within their ESG promises, that they will create housing that is affordable to members of their own pension fund. Let's just talk about what sort of salaries we're talking about. Like, we're not talking DCHC levels of income. We're not talking people who make $12,000 or $40,000 a year. We're really looking for an $84,000 a year income as a paramedic who's doing some overtime. They should only be paying $2,100 a month in rent. Can the staff and the board members at OMERS commit to a substantial portion of those units that they are developing within the borders of the City of Toronto to be allocated to union members, to the pension fund holders and retirees at a rate of income and at a rent band that they can afford, which in this case would be, under $2,100 a month. So that's my questions, and I would greatly appreciate if anybody from the committee wants to put those questions to OMERS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Mark. Okay, so we'll move to questions of OMERS from the committee members. Councillor Sachs has questions.
Well, thank you very much for coming back. Let's start with the reporting regularly to this committee on your climate action process. What impact is that obligation having on your organization and how you invest?
We actually welcome the opportunity to be here and engage in a regular reporting structure with you. It's helpful to us in many ways, but it's a very public forum in which we can share our progress easily with sponsors and others that pay a great deal of attention to the sponsor. But more importantly, it also internally is an extra pressure on all of us to say, this is important. This is important. What we're doing in climate is important to not only our plan members, but the sponsors that otherwise seek to represent those plan members. So it's hard to measure it precisely.
Okay, that's enough.
But it's much better than not having it.
Okay. The question that's been asked by our deputants, will you build housing that your members can afford close to where they work?
So let me I'm going to hand this to one of my colleagues, but I've got to start by reiterating that our principal purpose is to pay the pensions of our plan members. So we have an obligation, a legal obligation, to act in a way that is sustainable in terms of maintaining those streams of payments to our plan members.
Understood, but within that context, can you provide affordable housing to your members?
Where we can and meet that first goal, which is paramount, we will and we do. We can't always do that. We don't control the other variables outside of that, but you will see in the development at Scarborough, at Yonge and Eglinton, around Yorkdale, out in Mississauga, there will be considerable, quote, affordable housing. And those decisions are made in conjunction with the various municipalities in terms of how much of a development is quote, affordable versus less affordable, if you will. And we also then have, of course, the requirements of our own to make sure that those are climate-friendly constructions.
Okay.
When the numbers work, we'll do it. If the numbers don't work, we're not going to do it.
Can you tell, in next year's climate report, will you be able to give us some more information about this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I've seen that you have some reductions, both absolute and in terms of intensity. What are the major reasons for this? Have you just sold the emissions to somebody else, or are they actually coming down?
Catherine?
Yeah, I can speak to the attribution of the reductions. Some are through dispositions of assets, and some are through the work we're doing with the assets themselves to reduce their emissions over time. Some of it's impacted by the temperature of the state in which the company operates in. If we're impacted by climate change a couple of ways. If there's a drought, can't get the hydro, they have to turn on the gas, right? So there's many things that connect to how the emissions are generated, and climate change plays both a physical part and as we think about the transition, both parts play into it.
Right. Can you give us an example of a case where actual emissions have been reduced because of your involvement?
Do you want Hella to give the Victoria House example? The real estate ones are very concrete.
We have, in the Oxford report, you can see the specific reduction at the various building levels. I'll give two examples. One of them is in Paris. It's a building called 32 Rue Blanche, and via our retrofits and we have managed to reduce the reduction. So there are two areas where we focused our works on that project. The first one is the retrofit, so changing the mechanical system, installation, and so on.
Sorry,
And the second,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's not responsive. I'm asking about the companies that you invest in. Can you
sorry.
give us any examples of where your involvement has led to a company you invest in reducing their emissions?
I'll give you the example of Puget Energy in the States. It's a electrical utility. They're now, as I understand it, almost, if not totally, off coal as a result of our investment along with others. It's part of their agreed to approach.
Okay. Now, I understand that, as Hamish just mentioned, Shift Action is constantly reviewing your progress. They recognize there's been some progress. They still have a lot of concerns. Will you commit to meet with them and discuss directly with them their concerns?
Absolutely.
Now, one of their top concerns is that they want you to join some of the alliances around the world that are committed to net zero. What would it take for you to do that?
So we've made our commitment public to be net zero 2050 to our stakeholders, our members, and all of our colleagues, and we don't see that that's any different than joining an association often comes with other requirements that may not fit with our mandate. And so we've made the commitment, we've put out the climate action plan, which is public, and the commitments we've made are aligned with the best science, climate science out there to say what we need to do to get to net zero by 2050, and we hold ourselves accountable to those measures.
Okay, I always have more questions for you folks, but I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Cole?
Thank you for your comprehensive reporting. Appreciate you coming here. I know your main task is to make sure how many workers get their pension? How many do you represent?
So we have, thank you, three, Madam Chair. We have 640,000 plan members today. 200,000 are actually collecting a pension, our pensioners.
640,000 people.
640,000 people, including 75,000 non-full-time employees. And so many,
They want
many
their
people.
pension money, yeah. I just want to say There, the Yorkdale property in my ward, the Oxford property, has proposal to build 19 40-story condo towers on that site, 19 40 stories. Is it possible you might consider making one of them, let's say market affordable or market rent affordable, one of the 19? Is that possible? Just to consider. I know you've got to consider the pension requirements, but I hope that you will consider that as you build the 19 40-story towers up there.
I think it's a very fair request, and I'll try to answer it in a general way because I'm frankly not familiar enough with that to say one of 19. What I will say is that we very clearly would want to work with the city to put affordable housing in place wherever that's possible, as long as in doing so, it's consistent with our approach to earning a fair return for the plan members and also our climate initiatives. We have to look at both, and unfortunately, sometimes, supporting the climate initiatives is expensive. So yes, we'll work with you, and I can't imagine why we couldn't find an acceptable solution.
Maybe to have one of those towers that could house retired OMERS pension plan members. I'm sure that you could kill two birds with one stone.
I'm sure that if we tried to do that, we'd be accused of breaching some form of diversity, Councillor. So I don't think we'll segment that way, but if people chose to do that for themselves, that's a different issue.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? I just have one question. Economic uncertainty in the U.S., how is that going to impact the way you're making investments?
First of all, it's almost an hourly thing in the sense that the President of the United States seems to change his mind fairly regularly on things. So it's very hard this early on to have a really grounded response that can be very specific. What I will say is that our portfolio is diverse, and the diversity inside our portfolio, both across geography and across different investment streams, is an advantage for us, and it'll make it a lot more resilient in terms of dealing with whatever takes place. We are not invested directly in the sectors that appear to be going to be the most attacked by the American government. So we're not in aluminum, we're not in steel, for example. And so our direct impact from the tariffs is probably reduced relative to many others. One of the biggest threats of all of this would be the return of inflation. And we can all hear speculation as to how the various tariff initiatives could cause inflation. Inflation, of course, our plan members are protected because their pensions are indexed, but the plan itself is less protected in the sense that if inflation goes up, we'll have to affect the way in which we value our liabilities. And so an inflationary push compliments of President Trump would not be helpful to any of our pension plans, but certainly not helpful to us. The best way we have been able to protect that is through a conscious reduction in our discount rate over recent years, and again this past year, and also through the conservatism that underlies the provisions we've made. And so we can't give you a more complete answer than that, other than to say that it is, we have developed internally, our management teams have developed a number of scenarios. We're following them rigorously, sometimes almost hourly, and we're very comfortable that we can survive and weather whatever comes our way.
One of the things that makes Canada so impressive is our institutional investors and the stability that it does yield, and how it has made impactful change for the better. I guess the other risk is the big pushback based on the big pushback that's happening on ESG and DEI that is largely based on misinformation. So how do you feel able to stay the course on these great climate initiatives, and how are you watching that?
I would say that we're a leader in the field of diversity and inclusion in particular. So I would also suggest we're a leader in terms of our approach to the environment. we're there not because, somebody wrote an article in a Harvard magazine. We're there because we actually believe that the things we're doing help us manage better, help us invest better, produce better returns. Many of our top performing assets are actually green assets, as an example. But we have no intention of walking away from any of our commitments to our employees, and we are constantly being recognized as a very appropriate place for people to work. We make those commitments not because they were sexy to do them, we make them because we actually believe in them.
Can I?
Please.
For you, Madam Chair, I would just, again, going back to the fundamental purpose of why we are here and who we are, with 640,000 plan members, the impact that OMERS makes to Ontarians positively impacts 1 out of 11 households across Ontario. We have research from 2023 that demonstrates that we've contributed more than $13 billion to the GDP, created over 145,000 jobs. That really impacts small rural areas along with big urban cities like Toronto. And so the purpose why we are here, the foundation across Canada and Ontario, is why we come to work every day. And we are always very focused on the good that we can do as a collective, but especially more as we see sort of society across Ontario aging and the role that we play in that.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for all you do. And I also recognize that as a leader, you're always expected to give more, and we always push you more. And so I'm grateful that you have those conversations, do the right thing, and provide a lot of stability for the Ontario, the Canadian economy that makes the institutional investors we have in Canada so great. So thank you.
May I just make two real quick comments? We have no intention of walking back any of our commitments, and we do appreciate you pushing.
Thank you. Any other questions of the deputants, speakers?
You asked some of the questions I wanted to ask and ran out of time for, but thank you. No, I just want to say that I really appreciate OMERS coming here. I'm told that we're the only city in Ontario that invites OMERS to come and present on the climate plan, and that what we do here makes a difference. So thank you to all my colleagues. Thank you to the OMERS team for taking this seriously, making progress. Next year, I'm hoping for more stories, please, and examples. We recognize that a strategy like this takes time and consistency. And one of the biggest problems we've had in the climate world and environment world generally is a lack of consistency, because politicians come and go, and the mood of the day changes, and long-term change can't be made if we change our mind what we're doing every time politicians change. So I want to thank you for taking a direction and pursuing it, and please continue it every year. We will continue to push. If there are any opportunities for us to push harder, I'll try to find them, and if you think of anything else we can do that's useful, let us know. Thank you.
Any additional speakers? Okay, with that, thank you. Okay, that brings us back to the top of the agenda, IE 19. Oh, sorry, can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Sachs, would you like to move receipt? Okay, all in favor, all opposed? Thank you. That completes the business of that item. Okay, now we go back to 19.1, Cycling Network Plan 2025 Cycling Infrastructure Installation First Quarter Update. We have 13 speakers. I will remind you, you have 5 minutes. We will give you a final warning, and I'll call you out in groups of 3 so you know when you're up next and you can be ready. So our first speakers are Michael Longfield, followed by Gil Penaloza, followed by Ilya Krenin. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Michael Longfield.
Hey, Michael, you want to just click the mic? I don't know if it's on.
Is it on now?
That's better.
Okay, maybe I'll sit this way. I should know how to do this by now. My name is Michael Longfield, and I'm the Executive Director of Cycle Toronto, a member-supported charity that's been leading the change for a healthier and more vibrant cycling city since 2008. And you might remember me from such past deputations as TTC Board Item Number 6, Seasonal Prohibition on Lithium-Ion Battery-Powered E-Bikes and E-Scooters, and IE 14.3, Cycling Network Plan Update 2025-2027. I got here a bit late today, as I'm still getting used to relying on the TTC for my local trips. and experiencing firsthand the accessibility challenges so many experience on them. In case you missed it, I got doored riding my bike in a painted bike lane back in mid-December. The collision knocked me to the ground and broke my femur. I'm still recovering from the major surgery. But at this rate, I'm hoping to be back on my bike for the start of Bike Month and the Bike to Work Day ride to City Hall. And I encourage folks to circle June 4th on your calendars for that. That commute is just about 6 kilometers. My commute is just about 6 kilometers, and that's usually under 30 minutes by bike. And I'm lucky to be able to take that trip almost entirely along protected bikeways or beautiful contraflows. But when I was looking at Google Maps this morning, it said it would have been 25 minutes by car or rideshare, or nearly 45 minutes by transit, nearly 45% longer. And, sort of with all the understandable frustration around traffic and congestion, I keep wondering if all this bluster about solving congestion and bike lanes is really a distraction from the province failing to deliver on key transit projects, because it's really slow to take transit. I want to say clearly that I'm extremely supportive of the 12-kilometer bikeways being proposed here today. Ultimately, this is about the cycling network, none of which would apparently removing an existing car lane and therefore immune from Bill 212's meddling. Even more than the kilometer count, though, however, these projects all have important new connections to the existing cycling network and key destinations. I'm sure you'll hear today from other deputants talking about the importance of the connections to hospitals, colleges, and universities opened up by this incredible Ellesmere project, or the Finch Hydro Corridor neighborhood routes by the Bathurst project. And personally, I'm very excited about the Wallace Neighborhood Streets Plan project and hope there's more opportunity to refine some of the contraflow bikeways routes, including the extension of St. Clairens from Wallace to Bloor. For all these projects, wherever possible, we'll look to accelerate delivery timelines, especially in light of the uncertainty ahead of today's election and Bill 212. I will say on this front, Cycle Toronto's legal challenge, represented by lawyers from EcoJustice and Pallier Rowland LLP, is proceeding, and despite the province's bluster, we do have an injunction scheduled for March 11th, and then the charter challenge itself hearing on April 16th. The crux of our argument is that removing safe bike lanes implemented through provincial guidelines and through local democratic processes like this committee, like the work all of you do, is a violation of people's Section 7 charter rights, and will put lives at risk and will not address these issues of traffic and congestion it claims to. I want to go back to the two agenda items I mentioned earlier. In the case of e-bikes at the TTC board, our Cycle Toronto's position was that the seasonal proposed ban was confusing and inconsistent with other regional transit agencies and would disproportionately impact gig workers. The TTC board still voted in favor of the ban. In the case of the 2025-2027 Cycling Network Plan, I'm sure you'll remember that Cycle Toronto was urging for a more ambitious plan than the previous 3 years status quo to make riding a bike a better option for more Torontonians. Ultimately, our recommendations did not pass. I say this not to dunk on Cycle Toronto's losses. I say it more to highlight that these decisions happen through an open and democratic process, including this committee and the staff reports presented today resulting from multiple rounds of community consultations. And I want to thank staff for all this really hard and challenging work that you all do on this. They say everybody wants progress, but nobody wants change. And, for folks frustrated by this process or the decisions that kind of result of it, I want to ask yourself, if you've managed to convince the province of Ontario to override our local democracy in an unprecedented jurisdictional overreach that will do nothing to solve congestion and will put lives at risk, have your concerns really been ignored, or are you not showing up to meetings like this and stating your opinions? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for coming here, and I hope you continue to heal well.
Thanks.
We have Gail Penaloza, followed by Ilya Karinin, followed by Philip Peratescu. Do we have Gail online? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, and is the video on?
We don't see you. We just see a strange purple haze.
Strange purple X.
Yes, it was quite unique. You want to try turning off and back on again?
Okay.
Is it possible you have something in front of your camera?
No.
It looks blocked. Well, we can
Okay,
hear you.
can you go to the third person and then I go again?
Yeah, we can go to the next person. That's fine. Okay. Can we move to Ilya Krenin, followed by Philippe Pernitsa? Peretiscu. Ilya, in the room, online? Not in the room online? Okay. Philip? Philip is there. Online?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, Philip, go ahead. You have 5 minutes. We'll come back to you, Gil. You want to turn your camera off? It's still showing the purple.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Good morning, councilors. My name is Philip Panetescu. I'm a member of TTC Riders and a concerned resident of Ward 25 Scarborough Rouge Park. I've shown up for today's meeting in order to urge council to adopt item 19.1 and to move forward with the Ellesmere Complete Street project. For transit riders specifically, the primary benefits of such a project are safety and connectivity. With regards to the first item, a completed sidewalk network, improved intersection designs, such as extended curbs that already exist at Conlands, forcing vehicles to slow down when turning, and the potential in the future for more marked crosswalks along this road in between the major intersections would greatly discourage pedestrians from crossing mid-block, aka jaywalking. Separated bike lanes would also prevent cyclists from having to use the road for future bus lanes. Both of these measures mean less likelihood of collisions between vehicles, both public and private, and pedestrians or cyclists, and discourages crossing mid-block as a means to reach bus stops on the other side of the street for transit users. The distance between marked crosswalks that already exist at intersections on this road are vast for a pedestrian. Being able to cross the road to reach a house, street, or bus stop immediately on the other side make mid-block crossing a common occurrence. The lack of sidewalk on some sections, particularly on segment 2B between Conlands and Meadowvale, also encourages pedestrians to walk on yards, cross mid-block to reach side streets, or walk on the road itself, especially when the snow is piled up, as it's been for a week now. Many residents are students without cars, renting in local private landlords' properties. These are residents who walk or commute around this area often. Many residents are also elderly and are taking a bigger risk if they choose to cross the road without a marked intersection. All of this is happening along a 50-kilometer-per-hour road, where the current actual average speed is closer to 60 kilometers, according to the action report mentioning Ellesmere Complete Streets from February 12th. The same report highlights 6 collisions resulting in people killed or seriously injured on this road between 2010 and 2020, one involving a cyclist, 2 involving pedestrians. Improving the street for pedestrians would mean preventing such future collisions and bringing this road in line with Toronto's Vision Zero road safety plan. With regards to connectivity, Ellesmere has 8 bus routes on it carrying over 20,000 passengers per day and will be the future site of the Durham-Scarborough BRT, expected to have a ridership of 38,400 daily passengers by 2041. Ellesmere Road is an anchor to other transit connections like Scarborough Town Centre, which is currently a local and regional bus hub and will be a future site for a Scarborough subway extension stop, and is connected via the Highland Creek Bike Trail to 2 GO stations. Major destinations along this road include the University of Toronto Scarborough, the Scarborough Health Network Hospital, and the Meadoway Bike Trail. By separating the use of bike lanes from cyclists by providing bike users their own lanes, the city limits the likelihood of collisions or slowdowns of transit in the future, enhancing rapid transit connectivity. Pedestrianization and multimodal use along this road will also only become a more imminent policy as the area densifies and traffic congestion overall increases. Additionally, multimodal use of this road, especially by transit using the future BRT lanes, will not completely destroy our community, as some local residents are claiming. However, I do want to bring up something that does significantly geographically segregate the communities in this area is the Highway 2A and its singular bottleneck, Highland Creek overpass. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your deputation. Councillor Sachs has a question.
Yes, thank you. You've clearly done a lot of research and put a lot of thought into this, but I don't see your name on the communications list. Will you be writing into the clerk and to transportation with all this detail?
I did send a letter to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee email.
Okay, we'll find it. Thanks very much for all of your care and attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'll echo that thanks as the local councillor, and I'm sure you were engaged in the consultations that we had, so thank you for that and stepping up. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Henry. Oh, sorry, we'll go back up to Gil. Do we have Gil now?
Yes.
Okay, that looks much better. We see you now. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some ideas. First, I think that in general, when you do bike lanes, it's good. It's good if they are safe and if they are connected. For example, there's something that I haven't seen you doing. There's the unsafest bike lane that exists is when you paint a bike lane on the left side of the parked cars as a net, as Runnymede, as many others. So I think there should be a plan to move those. We need to move the cars to the left and the bike lane to the right next to the sidewalk so that the cars will protect the cyclists and not the cyclists protecting the cars. There's nothing as unsafe as when you are riding and you don't know if someone is going to open the door or if the moving car is going to hit you. So that should be a top priority. It's not a lot of cost and it's very, very useful. And most of them have nothing to do with the Ford idea. Second, also, when I say about connectivity, I think that the city needs to be proactive, not reactive. I think it's good to listen to people, but for example, don't make mistakes such as the Blur West. I think that the Blur West of Humber should have been done 5 years from now. I can think of 20 other bike lanes that were higher priority than that. Which ones? Connectivity, connectivity, connectivity. We need to connect Blur to the lake, to Front Street. So we don't even have a single bike lane that goes all the way from Blur to the lake. And we need to have at least 8 of them. So connectivity is very important. When you decided, because some good friends of mine that are activists were promoting that from Humber to West, then you did it, which is nice that you listen, but you should do what is right, not necessarily what is easy. That area is very low density, and so you gave and that's where also Doug Ford lives. So all of his friends are telling him about it, and he's right. It's very, very low ridership, and there will continue to be very low ridership unless you build connectivity, and there is no connectivity west of the Humber. Also, I think that you should not evaluate in council bike lane by bike lane. I think that's totally crazy. You should, the Department of Transportation should bring a complete network, not each stop sign, each traffic light, each bike lane. No, do a network, approve the network, the year's network, and move forward. Also, because a bike lane is nothing if it doesn't connect. So you need to approve networks and not bike lanes. Also, I don't know why the progressive administrations in Toronto are so bad at making bike lanes. For example, Miller and Rob Ford. Rob Ford did many more bike lanes than Miller. I don't know why. This administration, Olivia Chow, is doing the same as Tory. Tory was ultra-conservative, anti-cyclist, and Chow is doing the same. The city got about $1.9 billion from the Gardener. 1.9 billion. How much of those 1.9 billion went to bike lanes? Zero. I think that the city should be investing at least 1% of the budget, or even 0.5%. 0.5% is 90 million per year, not the same 25 from Tory. I mean, 0.5% of the budget is nothing. So if the city really wants to be a bike friendly, why is this important? Because if there is no connectivity, this doesn't link. So, and keep in mind that bike lanes networks are as good as the weakest link, as the unsafest part of our network. Finally, I also think you need to do sidewalks. Children under 5 ride their bike on the sidewalks. I think the most shameful statistic of Toronto is that 1 out of 4 streets do not have a sidewalk. That is shameful. We should eliminate. A sidewalk should be, it's like a human rights issue. Even the wealthiest neighborhoods of Toronto, 30% of the people do not drive. Everybody under 16, many over 70, and many others. So we should give absolute priority to building sidewalks. We should maybe even stop repairing where they exist and building new ones. And finally, I think you should do celebrate everybody doing summer streets. You have you have an $18 billion budget, gigantic. It's 18,000 million.
Final thought.
3 million of those on summer streets. All of Bloor and all of Young every Sunday, June, July, and August. Some will go to the cottages. The people that are more fun will stay in Toronto in summer streets.
Awesome, thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Henry Watsona, followed by David Field, followed by Marvin Macarig. Do you have Henry? Thank you for joining, Henry, and please do correct me on your last name.
Is the mic on? Yes. My name is Henry. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here today to give my opinion on the proposed changes on the Bathurst complete cycle project. My background is my father came from Eastern Europe and was raised in a small village. The way of the land was to walk a fair distance or transportation by means of a horse and a wagon, until his brother-in-law, my uncle Raphael, began importing bicycles, which had value for anyone looking for a short, quick way to move. Same holds true in the big city like Toronto, a desire for a short, quick ride by bicycle around the neighborhood. Steeles and Bathurst, where I live, in the family-oriented building, there are 40 pedal bicycles, an electric scooter, and some stand-up electric mobility devices. Only a few neighbors go outside during the year. Maybe it's good for everyone if the improvements in infrastructure appeals to them to ride. Cycle paths, bike racks to lock up their bikes, and traffic signal improvement and signs would be implemented. The $10 million price tag, which they quoted, for Bathurst Street only is an expense that cannot be measured by increased public participation. This is all secondary need and temporary to seasonal use, rainy weather, cold winter months, and need to travel when present alternative choices. Best made plans of mice and men. I see, in my estimation, a successful path from York University to Yonge Street along the Ontario Hydro Field north of Finch would connect to Bathurst Street, would be super. However imperfect the plans may look there are very many details to smooth over. I have an opinion. My advice is to the council, if they would agree, a pretty looking pavement is unnecessary. Widths will vary for traveling. On Bathurst Street, things get in the way, and the finishing of the Froze Way when there's shortage of good space. I pass by on the road thousands of times. I notice all the residential and commercial properties along Bathurst Street corridor. An example I wanted to bring today is the 8 parking spaces on the east side opposite the cemetery's entrance. And they propose to remove those 8 parking spaces. In my opinion, they must remain automobile or truck parking. Otherwise, they could just hang up a want ad for room for parking. nothing more empty than unused spaces for cyclists. It was expropriated from legally permitted desirable street parking spots. Please do not develop all the plans that they are looking for. The road engineers prepared to show off their development, and I cannot imagine a more bleak picture than to remove every object on the street and to replace replace them with construction, and a very long delay, I imagine, will be in traffic. If the shoe does not fit, try some other shoe. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you for.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Councillor
Sorry.
Pasternak has a question.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for coming down. Some parking spots, and they're to the east
On the east
of the
side,
Bassett Cemetery on Bathurst Street?
yes.
And your feeling is that a removal of such would be problematic for visitors to the
I think so.
cemetery?
There's a lot of narrow spaces, and that's one of the narrow spaces there. I'm not too sure what to solve the problem with, but I'm not expecting a huge amount of traffic. They proposed a one-way cycle lane north and another one going south. So that would prevent conflict between people that are cycling in two directions.
Okay. You also mentioned, you mentioned decorative interlock brick, did you?
No, I say that in my opinion, it's a waste of money to try to make a beautiful looking path when the city could do a cheaper job and save money. The taxes are just being wasted if there's nobody using the cycle path.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming to City Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We have David Field next, followed by Martin Meckerig, followed by Adam Roy Cahoon. Do we have David in the room, online? David?
There's David.
David Field? Okay. Martin Meckerig? Okay, thanks for joining us. Marvin, you have 5 minutes.
Hi.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, committee. My name is Dr. Marvin Meckerig. I'm a health promoter at Access Alliance, which is a community health center with 3 locations in Toronto. I work out of our East office located at Victoria Park in Danforth at Ward 20, and I'm a lifelong proud resident of Scarborough. At Access Alliance, one of the initiatives that I oversee is our very popular Scarborough Cycles program. But for the last 10 years, we have been working really hard at building bike culture and incubating cycling in Scarborough through the establishment of 3 community bike hubs that offer free programs to the community, such as drop-in bike repair, group rides, mentorship rides, learn to ride, and a whole bunch of other skill building workshops. I want to thank transportation staff for their work, for their support, and I'm here to speak in support of the projects included in this item. However, at Access Alliance, we are very especially excited about the Ellesmere Complete Street project for the following reasons. Firstly, this project will bring much needed road safety improvements to the Lawrence Oran Park community, which is where one of our bike hubs are located. Last year, the bike hub recorded about 700 visits, the vast majority coming from the surrounding neighborhoods. As a health promoter, a primary goal of my work is harm reduction and disease prevention. And if people are getting injured and killed on our streets, we take it very seriously. We want to work and find solutions, and implementing a complete street approach on a suburban arterial road like this one is a huge step. It also showcases what can be done to improve mobility in our suburbs in the 21st century. 2024 was a dark year for cycling safety in Toronto. 6 people lost their lives riding a bike last year, 2 of which were in Scarborough. We know we can do better. We have all the solutions, and a complete street on Ellesmere will help prevent these future tragedies. I know this project will make a big impact, reduce injuries, save lives, and help get us to our Vision Zero goals. Secondly, we support the project because of its ability to connect local destinations, anchor institutions like the University of Toronto Scarborough, Centennial College, Centenary Hospital, and other everyday destinations like Seven Oaks Long-Term Care. The Meadoway schools and shopping plazas will all benefit from this connection. We need to give more people more options to address barriers to equity. There's a mounting body of evidence that connects the health of individuals to the built form, and more specifically, their available transportation options. Communities that encourage more walking, more cycling will have healthier people. It's that simple. This project will help us get there. On a large citywide scale, the Ellesmere Complete Street Project has the potential to connect East Scarborough to a growing cycling network, and also include improvements coming to Scarborough Golf Club Road and Port Union Road, which I know very well because I grew up right beside there. However, I want to say that all these improvements and benefits to this part of Scarborough will only be realized with the long-awaited Danforth-Kingston Complete Street extension, which is because it will directly connect even more of our communities and each other and connect everyone to the core. So let's say yes. Let's say yes to this item, yes to individual health, yes to community health, yes to road safety, and let's continue our work to build a more stronger and resilient future Scarborough. Thanks for your time and your consideration, and I'll happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, and I didn't start the timer, but I think you're under 5 minutes, so thank you for that. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thanks for joining us, Marvin. Our next speaker is Adam Roy Cahoon, followed by Hamish Wilson, followed by Thanya Kamira Singh. We have Adam online. Hi, Adam. You have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Yes, I am speaking on this issue, representing Walk Toronto and a few notes from the accessibility community. We are fully support of the cycling infrastructure. We like what we're seeing, and we don't, the one thing we worry about is when we see reports like this, what I like to call the Canadian compromise, where things get watered down. I know we have a lot of natural water in Canada, but we shouldn't be using it to water down projects like this. We encourage that there be proper separation of bike lanes, or in places where they can't be properly separated, the delineation of what is the cycle lane and the sidewalk. The disability community can have issues when it is not easily identifiable which is sidewalk and which is cycle lane. Sure, there are cases when people in power wheelchairs like to move between them, but for the blind community, that can also be hard to handle. We are encouraged by the plan to add mid-crossing, and we encourage that mid-block pedestrian crossings be added even on some of the cycle lanes out in Scarborough or the other boroughs. One of the main complaints we find is jaywalking is done more because there aren't the opportunities that make sense for pedestrian crossing. It is just decided that crossings should be done where the city wants to provide it, but more mid-pedestrian crossings help with that. We, what Toronto is also, we're also very encouraged that none of these things are removing bike lanes. So we're hoping that most of these bike lanes don't suffer from any of the interference from other levels of government. And we just want to make sure that these things stay strong. And there is some concern in general, and I'll get into that in some of the other items that I'm talking about later, where when things are watered down, that, you know, they don't comply to some of the Vision Zero agendas and Transform GO agendas. Right now, the report is really strong with a little bit of extra oomph. We think this will be a good project. We just don't want to see things watered down. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Adam. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next speaker is Hamish Wilson, followed by Thania Kamarasingh, followed by Spencer Craddock. Hamish, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning again. And aren't I lucky that the OMERS item was prior, so I'm very happy that I have the flex of the rest of the day. Greetings, thanks, and including to staff. And of course, there's good in what's proposed, absolutely, though I don't really know the context for the further from core proposals. It seems that it's pretty good, especially out in Scarborough, and yes, the Danforth does have a subway underneath it. And it's a shame that most of the talk thus far about Danforth and Yonge and University, they tend to ignore the fact that there's incredible mobility provided by the subway underneath. So of all the places to squeeze the cars, it's on top of the subways, in my view, and it's subway relief for the price of a little political will. So the side streets, it's sort of like this, in that this is a very good thing to be doing, fixing holes. It's a very good thing to be doing. The crevices aligned with the direction of travel are rather hazardous for cyclists. They can catch a wheel and toss one. So this is very good, but alas, if you look at the broader context, that's the same area with a splash hole going through at speed. So the context is that the road needs to be fixed to have the water drain properly, because otherwise the pedestrians get soaked. So this is at Queen and Ossington. The problem was, I guess, when Ossington was extended for the new construction, oh, it's expensive to regrade a road, et cetera, who pays? The other thing is, of course, sometimes we don't have the side streets. A Singer cartoon that's absolutely wonderful, a bit dark in some ways. But sometimes we do not have the side streets to take. We have to have the direct routes. Part of Bloor, for instance, Lansdowne over, well, Dundas West over to Ossington. That doesn't have a lot of side streets to get to knit the connectivity. The Parkdale area, Queen Street, et cetera, that's a real issue. So the other thing is that it's almost not a good idea to be expanding the network until you actually start to maintain what's been given us and what's there. The snow plowing, as I'm sure you're aware, has been rather horrendous this last set of snowfall events. We have to have the networks accessible. This is a week after the event. Going eastbound, and eastbound was a little bit better or a lot better than westbound, but the pinch points, you have to swerve out and trust that nobody is actually ready to take you out. Then you get into situations where the plow just seems to have not been around again, so somebody, a young dad, has to go out into the road and have to take the risk of somebody wanting to being willing to slow down. This is, again, another issue of, that's impassable as a bike lane. And this is a week after the snow events. It's going westbound is a little bit better. Oh, yeah, and notice of hazard again at St. George. This is St. George and Bloor. Somehow the sidewalks were left. The bike lane was cleared nicely, and the pedestrians are using it as they're crossing. So please make sure that the plowing people know that there's a reconstruction of a road for something fancy. And again, notice of hazard, and that even though the rebuild of the eastbound corner of this intersection were done, it's still a hazard for throwing people off. I believe Miss, I've forgotten her name right now. I believe she's still in hospital with a coma. Again, you have to clear it out so at least we can actually use the thing. Going westbound, again, it's not so bad. There's that painted buffer area. This is at Bloor and Spadina. Sorry, this is really bad. A mammoth pile. And again, you have to duck out. That's at Bathurst and Bathurst and Bloor. It's totally unusable a week afterwards. So please, if you're not going to actually improve the snow clearing for everybody, and the priorities for clearing things too, very bizarre. Side streets like I think it's Shirley versus the transit routes of Queen. People have almost been wiped out, I think, because of the constraints of the snowbanks, and the transit's been badly delayed. And notice of hazard about Ossington DuPont, and I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you for noticing you're out of time. Any questions of Hamish? Okay, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Thania Kemeritsing. Do we have Thania here online? Thanks for joining us. When you're set there, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak as a deputant. So my name is Thania Kemeritsing, and this is actually my first time speaking as a deputant. I came from Sri Lanka to study at Centennial College, where I am a student in the architecture program. Today, I am here on behalf of many of my classmates to voice strong support for the proposed cycling infrastructure along Ellesmere Road as well as on Bathurst Street in North York, where I live. As a student commuting from North York, my daily journey involves taking both the bus and subway, often totaling around 2 hours on each direction. Delays are frequent, making it frustrating and challenging to arrive on time for my studies. If I could afford it, I would drive a car, but that is simply out of my reach for many students like myself. A dedicated cycling lane along Ellesmere Road and Bathurst Street would provide a more reliable, cost-effective, and efficient alternative. It would promote safe and accessible transportation while helping to ease the strain on overcrowded public transit. As you know, this project supports the city's effort to improve mobility options, reduce congestion, and create a more sustainable urban environment. It would also make a life more affordable for students and workers. Transit in Toronto is expensive, and if safe bike lanes were available, I could cycle to subway, saving both time and money. By implementing bike lanes, we can improve connectivity between schools, the local community, and key transit hubs. I urge this committee to move forward with this initiative, as it will greatly benefit students, workers, cyclists, and the broader community. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you didn't miss a day of school.
No, thank you very much.
Spencer Craddock is next, followed by Dominic Balanza, followed by Kevin Rupasinghe. Do we have Spencer in the room, online? Hi, Spencer. Thanks for joining us online. When you're ready there, you have 5 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hi, counselors. My name's Spencer, and I'm a part-time student at U of T and full-time staff at the Scarborough campus. I've lived in Scarborough for over 20 years, primarily around St. Clair and Pharmacy, but also in residence on the UTSC campus. I know bike infrastructure and complete street infrastructure, I should say, can be a source of debate, especially for those who haven't experienced it on a bike or as a pedestrian. But I wanted to speak today to emphasize that this infrastructure is desperately needed, especially here. As someone who lives, works, and plays in Scarborough, I am wholeheartedly in support of this project and many similar ones like the Danforth-Kingston Complete Street. With each addition to the network, it makes it easier for me and many to connect with friends, family, local businesses, and all doing so in a meaningful and sustainable way. I'm not alone. I live in residence alongside about 1,500 students who cross the project area every day. U of T recently actually built a 750 first-year student building just at the corner of Ellesmere and Military. And most students who live there don't own a car. With amenities like community kitchens, often we travel 2 kilometers to the nearest grocery store. It's an hour round trip walking and 40 minutes by bus, assuming you get one immediately, but only 20 minutes by bike and 18 minutes by car. Unfortunately, without safer street design, biking is the most dangerous option. I see the impact of this project in the conversations I have with others too, like one of my former coworkers. She lived in around Midtown Toronto and biked to work every day for most of the year. I remember her looking absolutely dejected when trying to plan a safe route to campus from her home. She could take the Meadowway for such a long stretch. Love that, by the way. But approaching campus, her route became like winding, unclear, difficult to navigate. Personally, this project and additions like the Danforth-Kingston extension would make it possible for me and her to safely bike from places of work to like my family home. My former coworker has since moved to another city that's further along with investing in multimodal transportation available to all ages and abilities. If we aren't building for a better city's future, we'll continue to lose out when people and families choose to live elsewhere. As a young person navigating Toronto's affordability challenges, I rely heavily on biking as a primary mode of transportation. I also take transit and drive, but it's disappointing how unevenly we've invested towards the latter. The lack of safe cycling routes poses risks to safety and isolates many from essential services and connections, even like a haircut, for example, which I got recently. So. In fact, I didn't learn how to bike until late in high school because it didn't feel like there were safe routes to and from my home. I'm really excited by the idea that this would change, and I strongly encourage this project to be implemented. Your commitment to championing better transit aligns perfectly with the goals of the city, and by supporting complete street implementation, you demonstrate your dedication to creating a safer and more equitable Toronto. So thank you very much and for listening.
Thank you for coming, giving a deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you for caring about our city. Our last speaker on the item is Dominic Balanza. Do we have Dominic in the room? Online? Dominic, are you online? Hi, Dominic. Okay, it doesn't seem like Dominic's with us anymore. We will, online anyway. We'll move to questions of staff. Questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, I have one quick question. Are we removing any lanes of traffic in any of these bike lanes that are proposed in this report?
No, we are not.
Thank you. Any additional questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, speakers on this item. Okay, Councillor Pasternak, then Councillor Sachs, and I have a motion as well. Councillor Morley, did you have any remarks?
I had a couple of quick questions, Madam Chair, but I'll take them offline.
Okay, we'll go back to questions of staff. Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm happy to take them offline. Thank you so much.
Oh, are you sure? Okay, I didn't see you nodding. We can do them if you want, or if.
So.
Okay, maybe quickly. Happy to take the floor. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you, colleagues. Just a few quick ones from staff. We heard the importance from the deputants about connectivity. Can you talk to us about how some of the larger new additions in this report before us, including Bathurst, Ellesmere, factor into our existing cycling network in a strategic way?
Thanks for the question, Deputy Mayor Morley. The process of identifying what routes are coming forward is part of a citywide planning process when we undertake an update to the 3-year cycling network plan. So connectivity is one of those key factors that influences why a particular project is brought forward, as well as other factors like opportunities to bundle work, like capital, bundle work with when we're doing say to go to repair capital improvements, which is what both Bathurst and Ellesmere are flagged for, but opportunities to connect to key destinations, like in the case of Ellesmere, the University of Toronto Scarborough campus is also a key factor of why we would prioritize it.
Great, thank you. My next quick one, and I'll leave it after this, is around multi-use trail and conflict. So in Ward 3, we have the Martin Goodman Trail along the waterfront, and we regularly have issues that we struggle to navigate around pedestrian and cyclist conflict. Where there are multi-use trails proposed here on Bathurst and Ellesmere, what measures are planned to make sure both pedestrians and cyclists can use the trail safely?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, mitigating conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists is best done using separated facilities, and wherever we have space, we do so. That includes separate cycle tracks and sidewalks. These are separated through either space or a curb that is cane detectable and preferred through our accessibility site visits by most members of the accessibility community. When the space does not exist, we revert to a multi-use trail design, sometimes in the boulevards, usually in trails. These are consistent across the city, and we create signage and other design techniques to ensure that it's safe for pedestrians and cyclists and other wheeled users to share.
Have we had any recent learnings or any improved sort of strategies around that? Because again, with the multi-use trail, it does become much more difficult. We can't delineate who goes where. So I'm just wondering, are there new textures being used? I know you mentioned curbs that are cane detectable. How are we evolving in our implementation and learning from some of the challenges that are presented in existing infrastructure?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, we use pavement markings to slow and indicate slow areas. We also use signage to indicate speed limits, which is consistently 20 kilometers an hour on trails, and improve visibility, especially at corners where that may be a factor. Through the multi-use trail design guidelines, we have a leading practice in Canada through those trails, and those include even specific design treatments where trails intersect with other trails or other types of infrastructure. Using a consistent approach helps all users predict what exists in our spaces, regardless of where it is in the city.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or speaker questions?
Sorry, if I can still have a question? Yeah, Adam, I have a similar problem with cycle tracks on downhills, particularly the Yonge Street Hill, where cyclists are going way over 20 kilometers an hour and not stopping for pedestrians, similarly on Shaw Street. What other interventions can we introduce to slow cycle traffic so they don't mow pedestrians down?
So on roads, cyclists would follow the same speed limits as those of cars. In terms of the infrastructure, in some limited cases, we've used additional pavement markings and signage to indicate right-of-way. If it's at an intersection, then all road users would have to follow the same requirements that are set out in the HTA, the Highway Traffic Act.
Well, in theory, they are all supposed to. In fact, very few do. I guess my question is, what other physical interventions can we introduce, given that we have a chronic problem with excessive speeds on downhills and not stopping for pedestrians, what are our options?
Through the chair, Councillor, it is a very tricky situation because anything physical would be an obstruction that would cause crashes for people at speed. So that is something where, as Adam indicated, using the right sort of size of that space so that people can move. In some cases, you narrow that space to encourage slowness. In other cases, you provide more space because you know that there could be potential for conflict. So it's very context sensitive of where, what kind of physical interventions can be used. And again, on a multi-use trail scenario, people cycling should be going slower because it's a shared space, whereas in a road, their speed is governed by the Highway Traffic Act and the speed posted for all users.
Right. So where there are particular trouble spots, and I have at least 3, what do you suggest?
I'd suggest you raise those with us as particular locations to look at for opportunities to improve as part of other future capital work or interim changes that can be done.
I will write you today.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, Councillor Pasternak and then Councillor Sachs.
To speak. Yes, so I just wanted to thank staff for their work on this. The major project is on Bathurst Street from Steeles to Bainbridge, affecting both Councillor Cheng's ward and mine. When I first saw this, alarm bells went off thinking that you were going to take out live lanes of traffic on Bathurst Street, which I would describe as the sum of all fears. But I was reassured by our reassuring staff that this was not the case, that this was off-road and be built on the public right-of-way, the boulevards. And it proves the point that you can have the safety for cyclists and for pedestrians built without taking out live lanes of traffic. In some places where it's where it can work is most welcome. I would say over the years I've had dozens of complaints about the condition of Bathurst Street and the adjacent sidewalks, and this is great news that we'll finally be able to address those concerns by resurfacing Bathurst Street and of course fixing up the various sidewalks. Moreover, it connects with existing trails along the Finch corridor into Earl Vales Park, and connectivity is what makes the cycling network operational. So from that, I just want to once again thank staff for their work on this. We had a public consultation, a public meeting on a freezing cold winter night, and the turnout was actually pretty good. So we've consulted with the community. We've received a few emails, most of them positive. We've clarified any misunderstandings, and we look forward to the project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Sachs.
I just wanted to say thank you. We need to see, much as I said to OMERS, we need to see continued progress, consistency, progress. Absolutely, we need to have much more safe infrastructure for cyclists to allow so many of our goals, and I appreciate that we are making progress, and at least that there is some room for progress without a head-on battle with the province. So we will need to do that also, but thank you for this.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Morley, anyone? Want to make sure I don't forget the online. Oh, okay, I have a motion. It's with, oh, sorry, firstly, recommendation for.
Madam Chair, Madam
yeah,
Chair.
well, go ahead, Councillor Perruzza, 5 minutes.
Just a simple little comment here. As you see, there's a piece of cycling network here on Yorkgate Boulevard. I too want to basically thank the staff for having come out, attended the site, looked at the actual street, reviewing the boulevard space, the boulevard width, and so on, and then relocating the bike lane from the road to off-road in the boulevard area in a much safer environment, much better. I understand that that the costs will also be slightly different. But you know what? In the long term, we get a much, much better product. We don't raise the ire of motorists who are giving up road space here, and at the same time put cyclists in a much safer environment on this small stretch of bikeway. So thanks to everyone concerned for seeing sort of the wisdom in that change and ultimately in the results. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with my first motion on Ellesmere Road. This is that we continue to review opportunities to stage the implementation prioritizing Military Trail and Ellesmere Road. And this is because this intersection has more than 8,000 crossings in 8 hours, so over 1,000 an hour. It is the busiest intersection in Scarborough, and it is by the university. So one, to make sure that we get onto this first, because it is currently not the best orientation in the intersection. And then two, try to prioritize that construction happening in summer, when it is the least disruptive to student crossings. And then the second is to continue to review opportunities to minimize bollards, and where we need them, just make sure they're high quality and design, not the white ones that get scratched up and really dirty. You know, my community has been clear that if they have the infrastructure, they want it to look like it belongs. They want it to be nice and a nice fit with the neighborhood. And then the second, I think now there is some question. They thought it was an error. It said to put an intersection in that we think is already there. So if you allow me to just hold for 1 second, they're working that out. We'll hold on the second one and correct that at council, so Councillor Pasternak can review it as well. We think that there was a recommendation to put an intersection that actually is already there. Okay, so with that, we'll vote on my amendment with the further instruction on Ellesmere Road. All those in favor? All those opposed, that carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed, that carries. Okay. We will move to item IE 19.2, and then after this item, I may ask to vary the order because Councillor Pasternak needs to step out at noon, so we might deal with the two items where he has motions. But we can get through 19.2 first. So we have Sheila White followed by Adam Roy Cahoon as the speakers. Do you have Sheila in the room? Online. Sheila, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes. Sheila, we just need you to unmute.
Okay, I'm on now. Thank you. Good morning.
We can hear you.
In
Thank
addition
you.
to being an environmentalist, I'm an environmentalist in Scarborough. I'm also a music director at Don Heights Unitarian Congregation in Don Mills, where I lead the community-based Don Heights Singers. We perform original material, and one of my songs, co-written with member John Sproul, is entitled Only One. We performed it recently for the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine at the East York Historical Society meeting on January 28th. And the song starts, I am only one, but still I am one. I will not refuse to do what I can. I am only one, but still I am one. Cannot do it all, but I can do some. Only one, I'm still one. I will do all that I can. And I'm here today hoping that there is a way to encourage individuals to believe that their small actions make a difference. I see a great deal of needless vehicle idling. I've talked to idling motorists in the act, and those conversations may lead them to turning off the ignition, but more often I see two reactions, a lack of awareness about the bylaw and a lack of caring about the bylaw. Please refer to my written brief for examples. From the staff report, I learned that there is a 311 reporting system for idling longer than 1 minute and a no idling sign request program that involves the counselor. I would like to focus my few minutes here on how communications could be improved to make these programs and other compelling anti-idling information available to the public. For example, the Canadian Automobile Association tells its members, quote, idling wastes fuel, idling pollutes the air, idling can damage your car's engine and exhaust system, idling can damage your car's brakes. CAA offers tips for avoiding idling. Turn off your engine when stopped for more than 60 seconds. Drive your car to warm it up rather than idling. Avoid using your remote starter unless you're ready to drive. Use a block heater to warm your engine before starting. In my brief, there's a screenshot of the city's webpage on the idling control bylaw. This is where information about how to report vehicle idling and how to request a sign location belongs. Making this a pocketbook vehicle wear and tear issue may cut through quicker than concern about air quality, which is what this is really about. As our roads become more congested with cars idling, necessarily because they're caught in stop and go traffic, with more cars in communities as they densify, with drivers hooked on waiting in drive-through lines for an order, often longer than 1 minute, I'm concerned about the lack of education and awareness. So I'm offering these low-cost ideas for your consideration. Review and assess existing internal and external communications on idling, on anti-idling. Have a downloadable version of the no idling sign, letter, or pamphlet posted online, making it available for citizens themselves to print and use. Use councilors' newsletters and social accounts to promote reporting this and the sign request program and anti-idling messages to encourage behavior change. How about a no idling lawn sign as a companion to the slow down sign some councilors produce? Could the city approach and partner with news networks to have weather forecasters issue reminders about the anti-idling bylaw as it relates to smog, climate, and air quality index, and approach the Toronto Press Gallery with a request that their outlets do their part to help educate about the necessity and benefits of reduced idling? Reach out to talk show hosts and influencers and our city's green ambassadors to champion this. Use city mailings, Transform TO, and online newsletters like Live Green to include reminders. Synchronize with an existing mailing of the vacant home tax notices and tax bills. Consult and partner with the Toronto and Catholic District school boards about communicating the message to young people. Feed environmental groups easy to reprint articles and public service announcements. Ensure that police officers understand that it is not mandatory that they idle their vehicles, that officers have the discretionary authority to limit the idling, and refer the matter of police anti-idling education to the Police Services Board. And consider the impact that drive-through establishments have on prompting and promoting vehicle idling, and whether a restriction on new drive-through operations is warranted. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for joining us. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next speaker is Adam Roy Cahoon. Hi, Adam. You have 5 minutes. Sorry, Adam, just hold 1 second. We're trying to unmute you. Or can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
There we go. We can hear you now. Please start again.
As somebody that uses a wheelchair, I am closer to the exhaust of most vehicles. Now, I've had to get used to the fact that new vehicles do actually have that automatic turn off feature. It was shocking to me when I was crossing the street and then all these vehicles would start back up. But I've gotten used to that. And I do definitely support this because of the health effects that idling can cause. And I do support that we do have to find other ways to encourage more individuals not to idle, like not to idle, to actually turn off their vehicles. And I do think, yes, it should be make it more of a pocketbook issue. Definitely do signage and promotion, and maybe even a campaign, if this bylaw goes into effect, where you actually use where you actually stencil in at some of the big intersections messages of the no idling, or certain places where you actually use actual signage and painting on the roads to really get the environmental message across. That is again, Walk Toronto is fully in support of it, as well as personally I am. But we just want to make sure that it is not one of those things where that is a rule that seems to just collect dust and rust again. I'm surprised it isn't a bylaw that maybe already on the books. It's collected dust all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that completes deputations on this item. We'll move. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Sachs.
Thank you. So what I see in this report is that you've issued a question for transportation. So you've issued since 2019, you've issued 0 tickets, right? No one has been charged for idling, correct? And in that period of time, your staff issued 1,783 warnings for anti-idling. So that means that your staff experienced, observed, had enough information to be able to issue a warning on 1,783 occasions, correct?
Through the chair, since our enforcement regime is primarily complaint-based, the opportunity to actually issue tickets is very limited because we get a call and we arrive on site and they're either gone, which is usually the case. In the rare situation where we have the opportunity to undertake proactive enforcement as directed by various programs, as you'll see in the table, there were a couple of instances there where we actually did have the ability to issue tickets.
No, but let's deal with your report as it stands in front of us. Your report says, for example, in 2023, there were 737 complaints. So fine, I understand you might get there, the guy's not there, but you issued 716 warnings. That means your guy did get there in time, because you couldn't issue a warning if your guy didn't observe the idling. So once you issued a warning 1,783 times since 2019, why have you issued not a single ticket?
These warnings are usually issued to the license plate number that we get reported. They're usually gone by the time we're there. So we get information regarding the license plate and we send it to the owner of the vehicle and we send them a notice that way. That's where the warning comes from. They don't necessarily go on site and find anybody there.
But you haven't given us any information as to how many times they actually found somebody, so we don't know that. How many of these offenses were repeat offenses by those companies?
We'd have to get back to you on that. We don't have that detail right here at the moment.
Okay, so this is a report the council asked for in 2021 on enforcement of anti-idling, and this is the only information that we've got, and what it shows is 0 tickets since 2019. So what would you, I will be moving a motion asking you to come back with recommendations to actually do something about compliance. Given the very inadequate information that we have here, are you able to tell us whether the companies who are the most frequent offenders, are they doing anything to reduce idling? Do you have any information on this?
We do not.
Can you identify who the worst offenders are in the city in terms of idling of diesel trucks?
We don't keep that level of detail in our statistics.
Okay, so you don't keep enough information to allow us to figure out who the worst offenders are, and do you have enough information to be able to identify what areas are being most affected by all this idling?
We can certainly, I can take that back to staff and we can see if we can develop that type of detail.
Okay, but at the moment, we don't know where it's happening, we don't know who's doing it, we don't know if they're getting any better. Is that fair?
What's fair to say is, in our experience, the compliance that we get from the notices seem to be working because we don't get repeat offenses.
Well, you just told me you don't keep track.
Complaint-based. It's complaint-based, so we respond to a complaint, and then we send out the warnings based on the complaints.
All right, can you give us an analysis of who the 25 worst offenders are and how many repeated warnings you've given to the same companies?
We can certainly get back to you on that.
Does that mean you can give us the analysis, or you'll tell us whether you can get the analysis?
To the chair, we can absolutely look in where we see repeat offenders by tracking those license plates. We do not have that information to hand, but we will look in to get it and get it back to you. And we've looked at your motion, and I think that will give us the appropriate timeline to do that.
Right, so one thing is the license plate, which is a vehicle. I'm asking you, are you focusing on companies? If you've got repeat offenses by Iron Mountain, are you tracking that? Do you have the data so you could tell us Iron Mountain has committed 2 or 3 or 600 offenses?
I'm assuming that the license plate is issued to an individual unless it's issued to a fleet. If it's part of a fleet of vehicles that is related to a company, that would be probably the only way that we could figure that out.
All right.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay, and can we...
Thank you. Additional questions to staff? Okay, speakers this item, Councillor Sachs.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. What we have here, I mean, yes, the city is getting better in terms of our own vehicles, but in terms of everybody else, all we can see here is lots of warnings, no tickets, and no apparent evidence as to whether idling is improving or not. Idling doesn't produce any social benefit for the fuel consumed, for the air pollution that's created, and we just don't even seem to know whether these are mostly repeat offenses. So I have a motion here developed, thank you, with input from Barbara Gray, we accepted asking for more time again. We need to know what the pattern is. Is it getting better? Are there repeat offenders? What's being done about them? We need a plan to improve compliance other than just issuing no tickets ever. So that's what my motion is for. And I do appreciate that the city fleet is doing a lot of work to improve, which is great. Our sustainable fleet work is important. It sets a good example. It's saving us money. It's reducing emissions. But city-owned vehicles are a very tiny percentage of the number of trucks that are on the street. And we've been told over and over by, for example, the traffic pollution experts at the University of Toronto, that these diesel vehicles, especially the older ones, have an outsized adverse impact on the health of people in Toronto. We have lots of problems having to do with the kilometers driven, but idling is just a complete loss. Somebody who's sitting there idling isn't moving from any place to anywhere. There's no social benefit being created, just noise pollution, climate pollution, air pollution, and it's contrary to the law, we're not doing anything about it. So that's the reason for my motion. Hopefully that we'll get an analysis before the end of the year. I mean, waiting for the end of the year to even know who the worst offenders are, I hope it doesn't have to wait that long. I will be pestering you looking for some data. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions to staff? Oh, sorry, we're on speakers, additional speakers. Okay, seeing none. The amendment, all in favor, all opposed, that carries. The item is amended, all in favor, all opposed, that carries. Okay, Councillor Pasternak needs to step out at noon. Although he can come back after lunch, and I think it's ambitious to think we finish by 12:30, but we can proceed in that consideration. So with that, if everybody's okay, we'll do 1910 and 1912 because he has motions on that. And then we'll keep going through the agenda, and then we are expecting you back if we continue though, Councillor Pasternak. So, okay, 1910 has one speaker. Adam, are you online? We're doing 1910 options to fund and expand the H2O water trailer.
Yep, he's back online. Just needs to turn his camera on.
Thank you.
All
Adam,
right, I'm here.
You have 5 minutes. We can hear you.
Well, the main thing I want to say is this is a good branding opportunity because Toronto water out of the tap is some of the best tasting water at the moment, and it's been the best tasting water for years. Even city water was bottled and sent to other cities, including my Easter Seals camp, for the water used up on Georgian Bay in the cafeteria. They actually would fill the water coolers with water that actually said it was from the city of Toronto. So what I want to say is that definitely, if these trailers are used, that it be actual City of Toronto water. The other paragraph that I think is most important is that you really do work at making more water bottle, Stanley Cup, whatever, water filling stations that, and make it easier for both people, humans and the canine community to actually have the access to water. With the fact that we are becoming a warmer city, in the summer there are some warmer days, and it's not always easy for everyone to bring enough water, or sometimes they realize it's warmer out, but they don't necessarily want to go home. So having easier water places will let us keep our parks and other public spaces vibrant even on some of these warmer days without having to affect the people. Anyway, I know you started the timer late, but I'm gonna stop now anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Twice I started the timer late, but you've noticed, you've been on it. Any questions of Adam? Thank you, Adam. Okay, questions of staff? Okay, seeing none. Speakers, Councillor Pasternak.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a motion. We can put it on the screen. It has been vetted by staff, so I think we're all on side. This discussion actually originated from a member's motion. I had two events in my ward in which both festivals wanted the water truck. A group did have it booked, and then they were notified that their booking was canceled and that the water truck was going to another event. The reason given was the other event was bigger. Well, we just can't operate on that basis. And then as we looked more closely at this, it was determined that we just really don't have the capacity to service all the needs. So these water trucks at events are actually wonderful. And one thing I often say is, one of the things I miss about Toronto when I'm vacationing is I miss the water. Because it is very high quality, as mentioned by the deputant. It is wonderful to drink. And we thank the wonderful staff at Toronto Water for keeping it that way. But when we have these events, we want to encourage a few things. First of all, we want to make sure if it's hot outside, we want to make sure people are hydrated, that we have no kind of medical issues from dehydration or heat prostration. At the same time, we want to encourage reusable containers. We'd prefer to have these trucks at our locations rather than people walking around with bottled water. So having them is very convenient. The only suggestion I would make, other than on the motion of purchasing more, is have them more visible, because sometimes they're kind of hidden in some far corner somewhere because they have to be plugged in. So with that, I hope we can have the water trucks, the new ones, available for FIFA next year. And we hope that the council will certainly endorse this as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Amendment carries. All those in favor of the item? All those opposed? The item carries. Okay, so that brings us to 1912, which again we were going to do because Councillor Pasternak needed to leave. Were there any questions of staff? Okay, speakers on the item. Councillor Pasternak? Oh, sorry, Adam is registered to speak on this, so Adam, you want to go ahead? Thanks, Adam. We can't hear you. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, I wish the start video button would also unmute you. I think at one point WebEx actually did that. That's why I was doing it. Which item are we on? You seem to be bouncing around a bit.
Sorry, yes, we did jump around. We're on 1912, clearing sidewalks.
Oh, okay, good. The new item. As you probably can tell, I am a wheelchair user. My first year in Toronto was the famous year that we called in the army. But being somebody, and me and my dad were talking about that in a phone call because he actually lived in Toronto with me for that first year, so I could transition. And he's like, even though people were ridiculed, that was the smartest move the city could make. Now, I know why I'm saying this is because rather than just starting to, in these early days, start shifting responsibility back and forth to different people, I think what needs to be changed in this wording of this bylaw is to say "and" to, because I know that the people that cleared my building would have happily probably cleared the street area, but one time they did that and they got a slap on the wrist for actually clearing the street because of something getting by a street sign getting a little bent. So I'm really thinking that there needs to be a unified strategy, and even with digital technology and with everybody having devices, updated maps can even be put out every October, November to say the city is still going to be the main person responsible, but during big storm, if you're willing to take the extra time to help clean up these areas, yes, these areas we can definitely use to help on cleaning up. I definitely think these are still early days, and we definitely need to. It's only with that miracle of Mother Nature and me being a Christian and some prayers to God from me and my church that we've had a miraculous thaw that's actually done at least most of the hard work in the downtown core. But the main thing is we need to actually have a full, nice time where more people can work at this agenda item, and it can be a communication of all parties to figure out who is allowed to pitch in and help out, rather than saying, oh, you gotta wait for the city, which for the most part they were paralyzed by having big snowbanks everywhere. So for some reason they weren't touching a lot of places. Everyone needs to figure out and take time and figure out what's gonna happen. And the main thing that we needed through this whole process is better communication and encouragement for more of the community to help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions of Deputant? Okay, seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. Speakers on this item, Councillor Pasternak.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, for the accommodation. I'm going on to Zoomer Radio to talk about snow clearing. But I did want to thank staff for actually their work in handling the major storm that we had this past week. Trying to clear efficiently and accurately over a city that's, I think, 600 square kilometers. Oh yes, I do have a motion here where I'm asking staff to report back to our committee where we want to review the bylaw provisions, because a lot of institutions in our city are not pulling their weight. And this would be including public and private schools, residential buildings, condominiums, museums, galleries, some of the TTC entranceways, long-term care and retirement homes, retail and commercial businesses, and all private sector buildings and structures. It's my understanding that up to 2 centimeters, these various institutions are responsible for clearing the sidewalks in front of their building, and of course their walkways and driveways. After 2 centimeters, it then becomes our responsibility. And it's my view that these institutions really should be clearing up their own property. We're not running a snow clearing business here at the city for profit making or even nonprofit organizations. They should pick up a shovel or a snow blower and get the job done. All public and private schools have usually maintenance people or janitors on site, as well as snow blowers and snow moving equipment. So we need clarity in the bylaw, and that's what my motion hopes to achieve. When I get complaints about snow removal, it's often because of the confusion in the bylaw and the lack of support we receive from many private sector and nonprofit and charitable organizations who should be clearing up their site. And they should be doing that for their own customers and for their own residents, making sure that the sidewalk in front of the building is safe, that the walkways surrounding the building and to the building are safe, and that by not doing so, they're actually opening themselves up to liability and, of course, creating great inconvenience for their residents. So this is, I thank Councillor Sachs for bringing this forward. Whenever we have a major snowfall, it always triggers the conversation of cleaning up our city and how do we do it effectively. I think In this case, we got 2 waves of snow. I think one was on a Thursday or Wednesday, and then we got the second one on the weekend. So I understand that when it comes to hiring these companies that operate, their business model is on a call-in basis when their teams are needed, their equipment is needed. That is not a perfect model, but when it comes to seasonal requirements, there's very few other models before us. It's a call-in basis when needed, and that's exactly what our procurement process looks for. Should we look at weak links in that roster of companies? We absolutely should. Is there room for improvement? Of course there is. But basically, we need more shovels and snow blowers on the ground, and only through these various institutions and buildings can we do it. And that way we can clear up the snow faster. We're not responsible for these various organizations and can focus on the sidewalks and roads in residential areas. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Sachs?
Yes, thank you. So I brought this motion, I do have a motion. Municipal licensing and standards tells me, and apparently transportation agrees, that this should be focused on transportation, that MLS doesn't have a role in this particular part of enforcement, so I've agreed to take them out. So I have a motion to take them out. But this is a situation where we, the city, are taking on too much on our own responsibility. It's not possible for extreme weather to be managed exclusively at public expense. Until 2022, certainly for my entire lifetime, property owners were legally responsible to clear the sidewalk abutting their property. The city got sued a couple of times by people who fell on sidewalks where the resident didn't clear it, and the city adopted a policy of clearing all sidewalks. And I support that. And it's, it is an important thing of gender equity and other things that sidewalks be cleared. But we shouldn't also be letting off the hook, particularly the large corporate property owners. And this is what happened in 2022. It certainly happened in many places this month, that we had, even on major streets, large condo buildings who did absolutely nothing, did not lift a finger. The city staff were completely overwhelmed, and so many inches of snow, ice were left almost impassable on major street sidewalks for a week until the city snow removal crews finally got there. And in the meantime, the corporate owners are just sitting on their hands doing nothing. They cleared their internal driveways, pushing the snow onto the sidewalk, but they didn't clear their sidewalks. And that's because the city bylaw says that if the city has undertaken responsibility, the property owner has no responsibility. This is a self-inflicted problem that we should fix. The corporate landlords in particular, corporate property owners, should have to clear their sidewalks. Yes, we'll provide a backup, but we need everyone to have this responsibility, and we need there to be enforcement if they don't. So that's what the reason for my request and the reason for the motion about MLS.
Thank you. Additional speakers? Okay, I just have some comments. Firstly, I want to thank city staff for all the hard work that they've done over the last couple of weeks. While I was sleeping in my warm, cozy bed, they were out overnight clearing snow on our city streets. It is a thankless job, as we have seen over the last 2 weeks. And I will say that that is largely by some of the behavior of my colleagues on council, which I think what I saw this week was City Hall at its absolute worst. Absolute worst. And, I think there was misinformation. We have not been clear with the public on what the issues were, and there are issues. We have issues every single snowstorm. And you know what our city staff do? Because they're wonderful, hardworking, dedicated public servants. They always do a lessons learned and say, how can we do better next year? And to say that we did not do better than 2022 in all parts of the city is absolutely false. Perhaps in some, but I will tell you that in my ward of Scarborough Rouge Park, in 2022, I had 360 complaints to my office within several days. This year, I had 50. There was considerable improvement, considerable. And in part, that's because we implemented the recommendations of the Auditor General. And what she said explicitly was that we should have the same company that is doing the sidewalks, the windrows, and the roads to ensure that they are better synced. And it worked. Did I have problems? Absolutely. And how did we handle it in our office? We put every single one into 311, and at the end of the day, we did a triage to identify the ones that were safety hazards, that were particularly problematic, where we knew that the residents were seniors or had mobility issues, and we triaged them, and we worked with city staff, and we had daily check-ins with them. That is how you manage a crisis. That's what we did in 2022. In 2022, we had a whiteboard. Every single call that came into our office went onto the whiteboard. We looked for areas of concern where improvements were needed. In the north part of my ward, we identified that we had very narrow roads and that the contractors' plows were too wide and that there were cars on the street. We worked with transportation services to have those towed out, to have those streets cleared. And then in this current contract, we ensured that the contractor has a mix of equipment, including smaller equipment that could get through that street. And I didn't get a complaint into my office from those same streets that I had calls about in 2022. So I think it's important that we reflect on what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve. And there absolutely were issues in the city, but I will say that they were largely with the sidewalks in the downtown core, which are ones that have been new to us to start servicing. Over the last term of council, I had colleagues that wanted us to clean that area of the city with sidewalks, to bring that into the city. And transportation services was clear that it was difficult, and it was clear that it wasn't standard equipment. They did a pilot, they worked hard, they knew it wasn't off the shelf, they did the best they can, and now this is probably the first year where we've had a full snowstorm of that size in those new areas that are newly serviced. So it's absolutely a work in progress, and they have been completely honest and upfront with all of us about that. And instead of throwing our transportation services staff under the bus in the way that we did, we should have been respectful, we should have thanked them, we should have said every single day in a working group, hey, what are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? How can we do better? That's how we work together. That's how you handle a crisis. That's certainly the way that we've done it in the past, and I'm hopeful that this way we're gonna do it in the future. Because having those conversations, we could have said, okay, do we have neighbors? Do we have partners? Are there other people that we can call in to help us in here? We didn't do any of that. We just threw them under the bus, and it's completely unacceptable. This is City Hall at its worst. I have never, ever seen city staff treated so poorly as I did this week. Anyway, I leave that. I do thank Councillor Pasternak, and I do thank Councillor Sachs, because their motions were thoughtful, considerate. They talked to transportation staff. It's recognizing that we have a need for continuous improvement. That's what we are committed to in a city. That's why we have an Auditor General. The Auditor General's role is to always reflect and say, how can we do better? And you know what? The fact that they find things, that's actually good. We run around when we get an Auditor General report and we think the sky is falling and it's all bad. It's actually good. We are identifying ways to improve, ways to do things better. That's what we continually do. Anyway, I just think that we need to reflect. Winter maintenance comes back every single year. We know that we will be asking for that data. I will ask for that data to show how we did in 2022 versus how we did in 2025. And I think we have to be honest about where there were problems and solve them. That's what we're here to do. Not to create misinformation and to stir up things and create a crisis only to look like we're solving a crisis. That's poor behavior, and I'm very disappointed that that's what we saw this week. So again, thank you to city staff. Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Thanks to Councillor Sachs for thoughtful motions that are moving this forward in a good way together. Thank you. Oh, motions, okay. Yes, Councillor Cole would like to speak.
Yes, how do you follow that? Thank you, Councillor McKelvey, Deputy Mayor McKelvey. Yeah, no, just some reflection. I wasn't going to speak to this because, I mean, every time, I've been at this snow clearing business for many years, and I can't remember a heavy snowfall when there hasn't been panic in the streets in Toronto. So, and I was involved with Mel Lastman when we called in the Army. I was involved in the days when we had this magic solution called the snow melt, the, what was it called, the Snowzilla or whatever. Everybody said, oh, that's going to solve all our problems. And all the councilors said, yeah, let's bring in the Snowzilla. Councilor Nunziata knows that. That was a total joke with these melters that were breaking down every 5 minutes. So, you know, one of the big problems is that sometimes councilors, without experience, are armchair quarterbacks. They basically, you know, it's just like the sidewalk snow clearing project. You know, they just said, oh, this is going to solve everything. And it is just another example of councilors micromanaging, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And that's why we had problems with the downtown streets and midtown streets. The sidewalks were a mess. You know, people crying on the phone, can't get out of their buildings. I had to personally go with a crew of volunteers to release free people from a seniors building who couldn't get out of their building to go shopping or to go to the drugstore. They couldn't get out of their building for a week. So we went with shovels. We asked the local contractor to come with a bobcat because Toronto Community Housing was incapable of doing anything. Impossible to get a hold of anybody. Tried to call city transportation, whatever. They just said, go to 311. And then we had a person assigned to us. Oh, I'm over billed here. Go back to 311. Anyways, so sometimes, and I've done that in the past, where I've taken shovels myself, I've taken volunteers, we've cleared sidewalks ourselves to let people out. That's not unusual. But this was a real difficult one because it was pushing seniors onto sidewalks because they couldn't walk the sidewalks, so they were walking the streets with traffic that was relentless. That went on for a week. So, you know, I just think, as Councilor McKelvey said, there's always room for improvement, but I just hope these improvements don't come from armchair quarterback councilors who don't know what the hell they're talking about. Leave it up to professional staff. Find out what works, what we have to do better. There will never be a perfect storm, a snowstorm. There will always be problems. These are, I don't know if people don't see it. We have extreme weather events. The flooding in Councillor Nunziata's ward. These snowstorms, these are extreme weather events. You know, councillors making motions aren't going to stop extreme snowstorms. They ain't going to do it. So you're dreaming in Technicolor if you think you can pass a motion that's going to stop these extreme weather events. So let's stop blaming staff, blaming whoever. And as Councillor McKelvey said, everybody's got to defer to people that know what they're talking about and cooperate, try to respond, as many of us did, to our local constituents. And that's what our job is. Our job is not to develop new Snowzilla machines and come up with these and call in the army. That's not our job. Our job is to try and do the best we can with what we have with our professional staff and being empathetic with our citizens who did go through hell in this storm. But it ain't going to be the last storm, believe me. It ain't going to be the last flood. There's going to be other snowstorms coming, so all the motions in the world aren't going to change anything. But at least we can make things better and work better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers?
Madam
Councillor,
Chair,
and I recognize that
just-
Councillor Pasternak may not be here for the vote, but if you have to go, just go. Councillor Prutza, and we've been joined by Councillor Nunziata. I'll just let outside speaker first, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Prutza. Go ahead, Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the questions in that. I'm not sure what the motions are that you're putting forward today, but as far as corporate landowners should have to clear the sidewalks, I agree 100%. But I guess the concern I have, and I'm not going to attack staff because I like staff, but what concerns me is that to this date, and I always thought that the priority after big snowstorm, and you're right, Councillor Cole, you know, this was a huge snowstorm and residents have to be patient. But to this day, I'm still getting complaints of sidewalks were never plowed. And that's the concern I have, is that there still haven't been plowed. And so, you know, and it's been over 2 weeks since the storm. So, and I understand there's a lot of snow and it's very difficult. Sometimes these streets have cars parked on the street, which makes it very difficult to go and remove the snow and plow the snow. Maybe at one point we should just have no parking on the streets when there's a snowstorm, because it really is an issue in some of the streets. And Councillor Coe, I know in your ward you have some of these streets where there's cars parked everywhere, right on the street, and it's hard. And I have the same streets in my ward. So that's my concern, and also that you know, I think it's important that the councillors get a list on the streets that are going to be plowed and completed. So this way the councillors can communicate to the residents. I think it's really important that we can communicate that, the information we have, because I think if you can communicate that to the residents, then at least they understand, and you know, they're looking forward to something happening. And so that would be my only concern. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the questions, but you know, hopefully in the next week or two, we can get rid of all the snow on all the streets, especially the residential streets. That's my concern, where all these streets are one-way streets because of the snow plow. But it takes time, and I agree, Councillor McKelvey, you know, and we can't blame staff, but, you know, because of the amount of snow that we had, we have to be patient, but I think it's important we get that communication as well, so we can pass that communication on to members of council and to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you. You inspired me, Madam Chair. You know, a storm event shouldn't happen, and we should not say a few words on it. Look, I think I agree with you that in this particular storm or this particular winter, our snow removal service, especially in the suburbs, has been far better than they have been in the past. I don't disagree with that observation. I'm not familiar or as familiar with what's going on downtown or in some of the other districts, but I can tell you that with respect to my own ward, the folks that they have employed to do this work have done a better job under very, very difficult circumstances. So in that regard, I think our staff and all concerned should be commended for that. I have never, and I'm one of those that have been complaining about snow removal for services for quite some time. Why? Because I believe we could be doing it far better. But if we continue to do it the same way, quite frankly, I'm not sure that on that matrix we can expect, any better results. We are approaching now, I believe, if my memory serves, spending about $150 million a year on snow removal. And I remember some years back when I asked the question about why we weren't taking more of the service in-house and why we were just bringing all these contractors on board who don't know the neighborhoods, who don't know the streets. In fact, I was on one of my streets last night, a sombrero court, for example, where the sidewalk runs one way, but they plowed going the other way, and they plowed right across the boulevard. Well, I get it. The person who was on that particular machine didn't know the neighborhood, didn't know the sidewalk, couldn't see the sidewalk. That's what they did, and we will spend some monies in the spring or in the summer, I suspect, hopefully fixing that boulevard as well. So could that have have been done better. I believe so. But, Madam Chair, I was told some years ago that, Councillor, we can't take this service back more in-house because you know why? Oh man, imagine all the money we have to spend on the equipment, getting the equipment to do this work. Well, my retort then and my retort today is we are paying for the equipment. We're paying for the equipment. We're paying for it at a premium rate. We're paying for all the equipment, by the way. We're paying for the labor at a premium rate. We're spending a lot of money on this service. And do I believe we could be doing it better, far better? Absolutely. Similarly, and I don't want to expand the argument, garbage collection and so on. So are we paying for that equipment? Are we paying for those trucks? Yes, we are. Do we now have the right equipment to clear the city? It's clearly obvious that we don't. We don't have access to the dump trucks, and we don't have access to the bobcats and the lifters and loaders and all of these other kinds of things that you need to take to remove the snow. We're going to wait for it to melt, and hopefully when it does melt, it doesn't flood, neighborhoods, as for example happened in Councillor Nunziata's area the other night. I understand that was a water main break, but imagine all the snow basically melting, all at once. So, do we have the right equipment and the right manpower or people power to do that? It's really, really obvious. And all our gnashing at the teeth isn't going to change that. Am I going to blame our staff for administering all these complex contracts with all these contractors in the hope that they bring in their machines, in the hope the machines don't break down, in the hope that they're, that they have enough people to, to basically get on these machines and do a reasonable job? I think our staff do a great job of that, but they can only do a job insofar as the tools and the sort of the plan, the way it's laid out for them. I blame us because, quite frankly, we have been gnashing our teeth about this particular problem for a long, long time. Look, here's what I know that will happen in June or July. When the climate is sunny and hot, we will receive a report where 55% of Torontonians who did not shovel snow are happy with the snow removal service. But come next winter, if we have another such event, we will be here one more time, gnashing our teeth, because we will have given them exactly the same tools to do exactly the same job, to do it with exactly the same outcomes.
Thank you. Okay, any additional speakers? Seeing none, we have Councillor Pasternak's amendment. All those in favor? Sorry, we have to vote for Councillor Sax's first, so the recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed, that carries. Councillor Pasternak's motion. All those in favor? All those opposed, that carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed, that carries. Okay, thank you. Well, hopefully we don't have to talk about snow until until the next motion. Okay.
No, we'll talk about it
Okay,
in June or July.
we're going to go, actually, I don't know if we have quick releases for 1913. Does anybody need to hold 1913, higher fines, faster towing, and demerit points for blocking snow? Seeing none, Councillor Sachs, would you like to move it?
I want to move it, and I just want to say everything she said about you folks. I mean, absolutely. I know you've worked incredibly hard and been beaten over the head, and your staff is on it all the time. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, you need to move it.
I have to move my motion. Again, taking MLFs out at their request because they say it's not their job. But other than that, we definitely need, I mean, you saw in the motion a picture of yet another one of somebody with $70,000 truck deciding that it's perfectly okay to park it and block the streetcars, the buses, and everybody else getting through for presumably his convenience. And a $200 fine, which is about the cost of a tank of gas for a truck like that, obviously isn't a deterrent. So there was viral video of people getting together to push these damn vehicles out of the way so the streetcars could get through, we need to have more tools for the police and for transportation so that the TTC can do their job even when it snows.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Does anybody need to hold or debate 1914 request for an update on congestion management plan? Okay, I will move that. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries.
We've still got a few other items, though.
Yeah, no, I know. I just want to make sure that that was good on that one. There's no amendment. Okay, so we can go back to the top. We are on 19.3 Street A Environmental Assessment Study. I have to tell you, Amber Morley, Councillor Morley, Deputy Mayor Morley, my question is it always going to be called Street A? But anyway, we will leave that for the discussion. We have one speaker, Adam Roy Cahoon.
Good, I did it right this time. Okay, we at Walk Toronto definitely support this item, but the thing that we want to make sure is that it's alternative one that is followed more because it has a physical barrier between the vehicle lane, the cycle track, and the landscape infrastructure. And we're hoping that with the some dedication of vehicle laybys, because with the planned park on GO station and local retail being established, we want to make sure that, you know, as we know, there are individuals that are going to do their own thing, even with the best laid plans, to make sure they're, you know, that it is the proper unidirectional bike lanes in each direction will make it safe and navigate for pedestrians and everyone involved. And the buffering of all these vehicles, the separation of all these vehicles, as you can appreciate, sometimes when there are these speeding cyclists, and yes, Toronto is getting pretty good at, we could probably hold a bicycle race and have many competitors, because with the speed of some of these cyclists on some of these streets, when they are too close to the sidewalk, can be intimidating and harmful in health effects for pedestrians. That's the main concern there. Again, it's one of those things where if you follow that plan and stuff, and don't have it overly watered down, which again seems to be the Toronto and Canadian way, then I think you do have a good plan for that street. But we just hope that it does get properly followed, and that there aren't the mistakes made where streets come with drastic changes, and then the people are like, why is Walk Toronto not? They agreed to this before. Yes, we agreed to the original plan. We don't agree with all these modified changes to save money or to cut corners. End of thought.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, are there any questions of staff? Councillor Morley, Deputy Mayor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Adam, for joining us with your thoughts as well. Couple of quick ones for staff on this one. We know that Street A is one component of the transportation master plan for the Park Lawn Lakeshore area. What purpose do you see Street A serving within the Humber Bay Shores neighborhood?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. So as you know, and as you stated, the Street A was identified in the 2023 Park Lawn Lakeshore Transportation Master Plan, and it is needed in order to serve the Christie's development site and the new Park Lawn GO station. So it will serve traffic for that neighborhood and be a street connection to accommodate safe pedestrian and cycling activity and motor vehicle traffic. It will include street trees. It will also provide a location for municipal servicing for that development and a new rail underpass crossing.
Great. And we're very excited and very much looking forward to this addition to the community. Can you talk to us a little bit about the potential for gardener infiltration traffic that each of the design alternatives looked at, and explain to us what it means? Why is the case that we chose this particular option and how it was determined?
Absolutely. So one of the key statistics that we looked at during the period of the Transportation Master Plan was that the existing area traffic has about 90% of it coming from traffic attempting to bypass gardener delays through the study area. And in order to better serve local traffic and not contribute to being additional bypass demand, the Street A design was configured with the needs of local traffic in mind. So it's anticipated to the 2041 horizon that it would be well under what is needed for a street with one lane in each direction and turn lanes at intersections, and that if you oversize the street, it would tend to draw more traffic and encourage more gardener bypass. So we wanted to avoid that in the preferred design.
Great, thank you. In terms of access, again, we know in the past on-ramps and off-ramps to the Gardener were proposed as part of Street A by the previous developer of the Christie site. This was also looked at during the TMP process. Why do we move away from including Gardener access from Street A? You kind of touched on it in your last answer, but if you could just underscore that for us.
Yeah, I guess there would be three main reasons, or perhaps four, about why a new ramp to Gardner Lakeshore were not included in the Street A design. And that was reviewed through that earlier Transportation Master Plan, not selected as the preferred alternative through that process. And that's because it would increase that Gardner cut-through traffic through the local neighborhood, which was not preferred. It would preclude a future north-south street that was identified in the Park Lawn TMP to connect Lakeshore and the Queensway, which is in the ultimate long-term plan, a future north-south street east of Park Lawn. It would have a higher capital cost and longer-term implementation timeline and be more challenging to construct to do ramps onto the Gardner as part of Street A. And then lastly, and perhaps even most importantly for the local neighborhood, the ramps would be within 100 to 150 meters of a new school in this development area, and that is not a preferred configuration for safety around a school zone.
Great. I'm gonna just switch gears a little bit to cost sharing of Street A questions with my last minute here. We know the cost is going to be significant at about $270 million, and we know that it's about roughly a half kilometer in length. Can you tell us why it's so expensive? And then my next question is, how are you looking to potentially cost share with the developer on the site?
So the Christie's developer would be responsible for the entire cost of the street south of from the rail corridor to Lakeshore. So that's the majority of that, and that's as part of their development approval in the process. The reason why it's so expensive is primarily because it does involve a new rail underpass structure and retaining walls, and it's very close to the Gardner Expressway and the lattice structure that supports the Gardner in that area. So it's highly complex as an engineering project, and given that it includes an underpass, that does contribute to the high cost. The terms of cost share are still being advanced in accordance with what previously was approved by council in the Park Lawn TMP. But as I stated, the cost for the street from the rail corridor to Lakeshore, the majority of it, in terms of length, would be covered by the development site.
Thank you. I'll leave it there. That's my time. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of staff? Okay, I am going to ask a question, Deputy Mayor Morley. Will it always be called Street A? No. Okay. Speakers to this item, Deputy Mayor Morley?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to express my gratitude to everybody involved in moving this particular project forward. One question I didn't get a chance to flag, but I do want to get onto the record. There are concerns in the local community around potential reduction of lanes on Park Lawn, which is adjacent and sort of will be impacted, by Street A. We know that that's not in the near term, and we do just want to flag to staff that that continues to be an area of interest and wanting to ensure that there's a robust consultation process and a significant community engagement before any decisions that might have an impact on that might take place. But the community has been eagerly awaiting the redevelopment of the Christie site over many decades now, and we're close to continuing to move forward and getting shovels in the ground. Street A is an important component of this significant development in our community, and we're really glad that it's moving forward. So again, just wanted to express our thanks to staff and community members who've been involved along the process, and we'll continue to be in touch on it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Morley. Any other speakers to this item? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? That item carries. We did an informal poll in the room to continue, so we're almost done. I know Councillor Saxon may want to pop out and bring back your food or your lunch, but we're gonna plow through if that's okay.
I'll have to go get my lunch and I'll come back.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so our next, I'll move the motion that we finish. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Next item is 19.4. I just had 19.4 has one speaker. Adam?
Need for quorum? Okay.
Hi, Adam. We're on 19.4. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is a Eglinton, the Eglinton staging one. Is that correct? What I want to say on this item is that yes, we do love what is said here. Our major concern is that, as with most construction projects, they are gonna try and tell you they'll give you the world, but as when the actual construction starts happening, the recommendations usually fall short. They usually try and skimp on space, and pedestrians usually end up having to navigate life-threatening conditions. Sometimes there aren't the proper separation between the road and spacing, and we are just very much need to, in an area where there is the Eglinton West subway station, I think they've changed the name to Cedarvale or something like that. But when you've got all these things and you've got more pedestrians using that area, it is definitely a vital concern that everyone hold the construction company fully accountable if expectation for pedestrian right of way is not properly enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, Councillor Cole, do you want to move the referral?
No, what's happening now?
It's a referral back to staff to do more I can pull it up. Do you want to pull up the referral?
This is on the Eglinton.
Yes. So the motion is to refer it back for further discussions with the developer and then also ask for a traffic mitigation plan.
Yeah, I just want to say, just to staff, be cautious with these approvals because sometimes the developer will take the easy route out and take out a lane of traffic for a year and a half or whatever, when there might be alternatives. So just be very cautious in dealing with these. And we'll talk about this after the referral or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I have the referral motion. All those in, I'll wait till I turn back so I can see Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. 19.5, I know Councillor Chernos-Lynn had a question.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, my question is somewhat of a general one for staff. It's with respect to lane closures, and I know there was a new schedule of fees coming forward on that. I wonder if those have been, if those have come into effect yet, and whether they'd be applied. So this was really for the last item as well as this one.
Yeah, through the chair, yes. So the new roaders construction congestion fees do take effect on April 1st. So they would be applicable to quite frankly, both of these reports when they come through.
Okay, and are those publicly available at this point?
Through the chair, yes. So they are publicly available right now. Any of the applicants can go on the city's public facing page with respect to all the different fees, and they are there through the approval of the budget process. We are going through the process of updating the actual pages that reflect on roaders. Those changes would be in effect April 1st. So people will see, and in parallel when we're negotiating with developers or anyone requesting access to the right-of-way, we give them the heads up that this is coming and that they would be subject to those fees as of April 1st.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Any other questions, speakers? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. The next one is, sorry, apologies, I lost my, 19.6 King Street Transit Priority Corridor Improvement Update. We have two speakers, Adam Roy Cahoon, followed by Joe Crabe. Adam, are you online? You have 5 minutes.
I do want to say that the next speaker is also going to be somebody I support his his work as well on this issue. But what I am saying to you on this, and this is my letter that I put through for Walk Toronto, so I'm happy to answer any question, is the fact that I am recommending that even though I know traffic can travel on, right now, traffic is allowed to travel on King Street for one block and stuff. I am saying that the signs and the infrastructure that is there to discourage it is not as straightforward as just working with the province, which I recognize you'd have to make a color scheme on the road. I know maybe you can't use red, maybe it could be orange, maybe it could be something, to make a color scheme that says that this is not a road that anybody other than the transit vehicles is allowed to stay on for the full time. And why this would actually work is because even if half the people that are evading the stuff actually saw this pain and said, whoa, yeah, I can't stay on. And then you wouldn't have those people that just broke the rules because accidentally they weren't totally watching the signs or understanding the lights and whatnot. they would start to know, and especially if this was in more areas, just like how the red paint on the road for transit has made more people not have the excuse, I accidentally drove where I should not be driving. So I definitely think that a color scheme should be used for the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Adam, our second speaker on this item, Joe Crabe. Do you have Joe in the house? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As a member of the working group through TTC Riders, I'm pleased to see enthusiasm from Councillors Malik and Moyes for making improvements to this corridor, making sure that local BIAs, neighborhood groups, and transit users are involved with the decision-making from the start. As a frequent user of the 503 to get downtown from the East End, I've observed the dire need for rider-facing infrastructure to be improved. The remains of the original pilot are deteriorating, and it is regretful that there are still only 2 raised platforms that have been installed, and even those do not provide true level boarding with the streetcars, necessitating them to still deploy accessibility ramps, adding time to riders' journeys. Some of the tactile strips are chipped or partially paved over with asphalt, presenting a further barrier to the visually impaired. The FIFA Men's World Cup in June 2026 should represent a significant goal for the city to make sure that all stops in the corridor are brought up to standard, with level boarding, seating, and shelter reinstalled, and a general sprucing up of the streetscape in anticipation of the 300,000 plus visitors to our city. We simply cannot afford to have these visitors using personal vehicles to get to and from the games and around downtown, with our streets already being gridlocked. Mass transit is simply the only transportation method capable of moving that many people, and we must ensure that the King Street corridor is ready to bear the brunt of that operation. I would also strongly advise the city to consider extending the corridor to Dufferin Street and to connect, hopefully, with the rapid TO lanes that will allow the exhibition site to be accessed smoothly by transit in time for the games, with the aim to make that extension permanent once FIFA leaves town. As evidenced by the report to the committee, we have the data that shows that when the transit priority corridor is functioning as it should, albeit with the significant aid of traffic agents during peak hours, this major transit artery can get tens of thousands of riders to their destinations downtown significantly faster and painlessly than the streetcars used in mixed traffic. But we need to be thinking about how we as a city can further turn King Street into a destination and further deprioritize personal vehicle usage through this important transit corridor. When doing a walk of the corridor last summer with a group of volunteers, we were able to observe just how many pedestrians and transit users there were in comparison to drivers. It is truly surprising how much of the road space goes unused when vehicles are not allowed to traverse the corridor fully, especially compared with the narrow sidewalks on much of the street. For example, you would hardly know Canada's Walk of Fame was below your feet on the sidewalk when it's so tightly packed with people in and around the theaters district. I believe there are opportunities in the near term to pilot further pedestrianization of the King Street space while still allowing transit vehicles to use the corridor. One could be during this year's Toronto International Film Festival, where the street is already closed down around the light box at King of John and pedestrians fill the streetscape. However, the fact that this also closes the route to the streetcars and forces them to divert is a headache for those using those routes. Allowing streetcar service to continue while pedestrianizing the rest of that space during the festival would allow us to have the best of both worlds. There are many global examples in which pedestrians safely share the space with active streetcar traffic, and those vehicles are large and predictable enough in their travel to make avoiding them on foot rather simple. One other opportunity I want to mention for pedestrianization is between Church and Jarvis when the long-anticipated North Market building opens. This can create an even more complete link between the St. Lawrence Market and St. James Park, with ample bike share infrastructure already in place and a beautiful streetscape to take in. This would allow for an even clearer demarcation of the start of the transit corridor at Jarvis and allow that critical traffic artery to avoid any turning delays as it flows to and from the Gardiner. Through these cost-effective and evidence-based pilots and necessary streetcar stop improvements in the near term, we can work toward a bolder vision for King Street in the future once the Ontario Line construction is complete and road work can commence on King, leaving us with a complete street and a true destination. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation. Are any questions of the deputant? Councillor Cole.
When do you think the Ontario line will be complete?
I'm hoping before I'm in the grave,
Good to know
but
Joe
let's
has-
aim for 2030.
Good to know Joe has some insights we don't. Thank you. That completes our speakers. Is there any questions to staff? Seeing none. Speakers on the item? Okay, seeing none, I'll just thank staff for your great work on this, and the travel times are all public and things are moving in the right direction, so thank you for your work on that. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Okay, that brings us to our last item, 19.9, strengthening Toronto's tree canopy. I know Councillor Sachs has a motion, but we can start with, are there questions? Great. Oh, sorry, we have one speaker. Sorry. Adam, are you online?
Yes, I'm online.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
All right, just give me 1 second. The reason why we need, the positive reasons why we need to really look into the tree canopy is for both mental and physical health. With the fact that climate change, a shady tree can help mitigate some of the daytime heat that is going to come from some of the sun, and that a tree-lined street can help mitigate flood risk. But if you've ever seen even a moderate rain on a yes, it's still raining, but because the rain has to come down through the leaves, there can be a bit of respite from the heavy rain. The only time trees are obviously bad are because of windstorms. We appreciate this report, and we also, know there are areas of the city where, unfortunately, trees have been put in the sidewalk where some of the trees aren't getting the proper amount of water. So to also look at, making sure that the trees are healthy and the trees are the right kind for growing in the city of Toronto. But all in all, we appreciate this strong report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any questions of the deputant? Okay, we will move to questions of staff. Deputy Morley, did you have questions? Go ahead.
I do. Thanks, Madam Chair. I will try to keep these brief. And thank you to the staff for this report and great work. Can you talk to me about how we are increasing the number of street trees specifically?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So we have a robust planting program each year where we look to increase tree planting across all various public and private property. And so, through the street tree program as well, that we do that through our residential program as well as our hard surface planting program.
Okay. I'll dig into those some more. Thank you. With respect to the diameter at breast height that we know we follow at 30 centimeters for protected private trees, we know there are other jurisdictions like Cambridge, Oakville, Mississauga that follow a threshold closer to 15 to 20 centimeters for protected private trees. Have we looked at or considered lowering our threshold to increase the number of trees that are protected in our city?
To the chair, the Environment, Climate and Forestry Division is going to be undertaking a review of our tree bylaws in 2025. We're targeting a report back by end of year, including public consultation leading into that report back. And as part of that, we are looking at the private tree bylaw threshold of 30 centimeters and looking at other jurisdictions, and would report back as part of that in terms of whether a change would be appropriate in the City of Toronto.
Fantastic. And just want to clarify, as part of that report back process, will we have an idea, or will you be able to help us better understand what the impact of a change might be? So how many more trees, for example, might be protected?
Absolutely. We've already done kind of a general assessment of that in terms of understanding that, but this would give us a better idea of both, not just the number of trees, but also what that would mean as it relates to increase in permits, increase in resource needed to deal with additional permits, et cetera. So we'll be looking at this holistically, both from what it would mean for protection, but also would mean for implementation as well.
You mentioned just now you have a general idea. You've been putting some thought into this. Can you give us a sneak peek or any kind of high level estimates of how many more trees, for example, might be protected if we lowered the threshold by 10 centimeters? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if you have that information.
So I think we would say probably about an additional 700,000 trees. Again, that's a rough ballpark number. In total, I think the City of Toronto is about 11.5 million trees. And again, this is a specific subset.
Great. I'll watch closely and look out for that report. Thank you. My last question on this item is with respect to the EHON changes and whether urban forestry is monitoring the number of protected size trees that are being removed or injured as a result of garden suites or multiplexes that are now as of right.
Through the chair, we are monitoring that, and we're doing that in partnership with our colleagues at City Planning. The last report that went forward to Planning and Housing Committee did highlight that through the monitoring over the last 5 years, we estimate that about 7.6% of building permit notices for the various EHON initiatives resulted in a permit for either tree removal or tree injury, and what that report concluded is that that we're seeing a relatively low impact to date through EHON permits. But we have committed, of course, to continue that monitoring moving forward, and we'll continue to report back regularly on that.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And just with respect to that piece of monitoring, is that data publicly available? Do we have intention to make that accessible data?
Yeah, through the chair, that data is coming through public reports through the Planning and Housing Committee.
Great. Thank you so much. Those are my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions? Councillor Sack.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report. First of all, I want to confirm we got a little extra money for you for tree watering in the at the budget process. Can you confirm that money will be used for monitoring, for watering trees this year?
To the chair, I can confirm that yes, we did receive money, and yes, it will be used in this year, and we will be reporting back at the end of the year as we do on the results of that, but we are focused on how we can use that new and enhanced money, which is very welcome to enhance our programs.
Right. One of the problems that we constantly have trying to find places to plant trees is conflicts with utilities. What are you doing to address the utility conflicts so that we can find more places for street trees?
To the chair, thank you for that question. We have a committee, Green Streets Steering Committee of divisions across the city, where we are working and looking at this, recognizing that not all areas will be perfect for planting trees, but trying to find those areas that are, to remove conflicts, to identify ways to mitigate those conflicts, to look at the different opportunities. And then we're also working with utilities or engaging with other utilities such as Toronto Hydro or Enbridge, who are also in the land telecommunications. But in terms of the city, we do have a steering committee that is very much looking at this and looking at the opportunities to address conflict.
And will we be getting a report back?
I don't think we have one.
I'm not sure we have one scheduled, but I can take that back to the committee as we do our work in terms of when we appropriate time to report back, or we can integrate that into future reports that we have.
Yes, please. Yes, as Kim knows well, there are certain members of the public who feel strongly that the city is not doing a good job pruning our existing trees, that we do too much too infrequently and end up with bad results. what are we doing to ensure that the quality of our tree pruning is as good as we can make it?
So through the chair, a lot of work has been done with regard to tree maintenance through the forestry operations team and my colleagues there. There's been a series of improvements as a result of Auditor General recommendations with regard to crew oversight, contract management, for example. Where we are turning our lens next is around quality of service. My colleagues had a report back in May of 2024 indicating the progress of that work, and we are anticipating further report backs, I understand, this year with regard to that tree maintenance update.
Okay, and now one of the things that I hear from many members of the public is they want to help in some way. They care about their trees, they're devastated when they're lost. What opportunities are there for members of the public to help with street trees?
So through the chair, I'll start just to highlight the volunteer engagement and community outreach program that we have within urban forestry, as well as through some of our third-party community partners. So there are a variety of programs. It's either hands-on stewardship, tree planting, watering, monitoring, etc., removal of invasive species. With regard to street trees in particular, I think we to date have focused our efforts through community engagement and education events like the ones that we put on through National Forest Week or National Tree Day to increase knowledge and awareness of Toronto's tree canopy and the benefits of. And any other specific ideas, some of which we've talked about with regard to neighborhood trees and streets. We're always open to looking to improve or expand the type of programming that we offer.
Okay, can we expect to see more information on the website as to opportunities for people to help with their local trees?
Through the chair, I think that's a great idea, and we can take that away.
Okay, and I still want you to allow people to email about their particular trees. Have you given any more thought to making that possible? We talked about this before. Melbourne does it. Every tree has an address, and people can write in that the tree needs something or just express their appreciation. This seems to have done a great job in Melbourne of increasing community engagement with their particular street trees. Can we do that?
So through the chair, Melbourne has a fantastic program. The City of Toronto has roughly 650,000 street trees, and so we need kind of the resources to allow individual ID numbers or something to that effect. Certainly something that's on our radar on how we could support and promote a program like that.
Have you considered using what 3 words, which can identify the location of each tree without having to number them?
Through the chair, we've looked at how we could integrate the electronic capacity to do that through different platforms, and so we'll take that away and continue to look at how we could support a program like Melbourne's.
I'll call you. Thank you.
Please do.
Okay, speakers to this item, Deputy Mayor Morley. Good. Anyone else?
Sorry, thanks, Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Took a minute there. I also have no feed coming in from the room, but I've had a couple of tech challenges today, which is all on me. I should be there in person. Apologies. Thank you to staff for this important work. Always a big advocate for the work we do as a city to protect, maintain, and grow our tree canopy. Out in Etobicoke Lakeshore, we are receiving a huge amount of development pressure. Much of the feels like 25% growth the city's undergoing seems largely to be happening here in our ward. But I think the continued commitment around our tree canopy, again, protection and growth, really does help to maintain the characteristics that so many of us love about our community of Etobicoke, but also helps us in terms of our climate goals and being good stewards. So I just want to say thank you to staff. I'm really heartened to hear that there's additional reporting and additional work happening around the thresholds lowering so we can increase the number of protected trees in our city and ensure that we are doing this work in a good way. So thank you to staff. Thank you to my colleagues, and I'll leave it there. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sachs.
I think I can race you for development pressure. It's transit oriented, and I've got more subway stations than anywhere. But yes, we have enormous pressure on our trees. just as they are becoming more and more and more important. So glad to see that you're doing a lot of good things. The list of, you were above and beyond the tree planting, the tree survival, all those things are good, but not very many people know them. So I don't think we're doing a good job telling this story to the public, and I don't think we're doing a good enough job involving the public in how to support and protect the particular trees near them. And I would like to see some improvement on both of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional speakers? I have a quick motion. So this is just as part of this review to look at the fees and the fines to address compliance as part of this review and report back. So, and I raise this because one of my community associations, Highland Creek Community Association, has flagged to me that they do feel that in some cases the fines are so low that people just cut the tree down and worry about paying the fine rather than go through the permit process that is required. So that's why we're asking for this. I thank the community for raising this concern, and they do tree watch. They watch for them and they notice when they're missing and they put them in and we investigate. So thank you to that. Thank you to staff. So with that, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? Item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? I will confirm that completes our business of the day. Okay, thank you. Good job, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Have a good day.